Okie dokie. Let's do this, shall we? All right. So this week we're going to basically pick up right where we left off from last week. We didn't have a lot of time last week to talk about some really important concepts. So we're going to kind of take a step back today and look at some pretty big ideas that will help us complete this week's homework assignment. We actually have a number of things that we need to accomplish as far as assignments go. So let's jump into the content and see exactly what we're going to be doing. Last week, we started talking about the basic workflow of creating simple shapes inside of Modo. Now, was everyone able to complete their lab assignment from last week? Okay. If you had any problems with your lab assignment, let me know, especially if you had problems logging into D2L and uploading them to the web. Okay. That's a biggie. I want to make sure that that machine is ironed out and is working perfectly before we go further. So if you had an issue, just come find me. We'll work through it together as fast as we can. Okay. As we experienced earlier, there is a certain level of control that or a certain level of support that I can offer to these machines. I think I mentioned this last week on the gigantic ladder of technology. Unfortunately, students are kind of at the bottom of that ladder. Well, instructors were like, boom, one rung right above you. We're not even one rung. We're like half a rung right above you. So there's not a whole lot I can provide, but I'll do the best that I can. While I'm thinking about it, the live stream, okay, last week was a complete, utter failure of our live stream. I'm getting incrementally better at it each time I've done it, and this is now the 5th time that I've done a live stream over the past week, and I think I've ironed out all the bugs. So if you want to kind of get all the content from any of the live streams, just as a reminder, if you go to my YouTube channel page, you'll very quickly find all of the stuff just kind of floating up there in YouTube. So youtube.com, if I can type today. There we go. And I've already logged in to my user account. I am a Gmail fan. So let me just go to my channel page. And we'll view it as you guys see it. So this is how my YouTube channel page is going to look like just for basically everyone out there on the web. And I've organized my YouTube channel page over the last couple days to kind of bubble to the surface some of the really important elements that you guys are going to be needing to integrate with or interface with over the next semester. Now we have a recent upload, so as soon as something is uploaded and archived to YouTube, bam, it's just going to pop right into that section here. However, if you want to directly navigate to your class's content, check it out. If you keep scrolling down this page, okay, oh, FYI, I forgot to mention this. Here's the URL right there for my YouTube channel page. It's just youtube.com/user/PatCran. So Pat Cran. I know, I get real creative with my naming. Pat Cran. Okay, Pat Cran. That's me. That's my YouTube channel page. If you keep scrolling down that page, you'll notice that I've brought all the playlists to the surface. Now, unfortunately, our live stream last week was a complete, utter failure, so we didn't have one. But this week, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and hopefully this is the last kind of sea trial, if you will, of the live stream, and we'll have it ironed out. Once this recording completes, it's going to pop up right before GCOM 402 Thursday. Okay, so keep in mind, there's 2 different playlists that we got going on. I'm teaching 2 different sections. Tuesday, obviously, is you guys, and then the Thursday is my main campus section. You're more than welcome to hang out in all the live streams. You can watch them all. I encourage it. That's why I have them up for free on my YouTube channel, because I want you guys to get access to this content anywhere around the world. Okay. So this is going to be the easiest and the fastest way to get to our content. I'm still kind of exploring how I can embed all of these playlists on my renderography site. So for the time being, just go to YouTube and get them directly from the horse's mouth. Okay? All right. While we're talking about renderography, let's just kind of go back to the website and navigate to the GCOM 402 section where I've started to post all of this week's content. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because there's still some things that we have to wrap up from last week. So we're going to start the class basically where we left off last week, talking about the construction practice for our coffee cup. It's going to be really simple, but there are a couple things that we need to go over from last week so that you can finish your homework assignment for this week. I think you'll get some time in class today to finish up, to do last week's homework assignment. I still want you to do it, okay? It's not going to be late Officially, I'm issuing that assignment for you guys today, okay? So I have 1 week to complete that assignment. So this is going to be kind of a busy week for you, as you'll have 2 different things that you'll have to do. You'll have to do the coffee cup, which should take you all of about maybe 25, 30 minutes. It won't be too bad. Actually, here's a little tip. Follow along with me here in a minute, and you can knock out 75% of that assignment with me as I go through the tools, okay? So FYI. And then this week, we're going to jump in and we're going to start talking about the role of the item. And we'll have a fun little assignment that will allow you to work with items pretty creatively. Okay, so more on that in a minute. Let's go back in time a little bit to last week's stuff. In the Introduction to 3D Modeling section of the GCOM 402 course page, you can see that under the homework section, we do have the coffee cup that we need to complete. It's going to be relatively easy. This is kind of, everyone starts off with a very, very simple shape. If you need some extra support on how to finish this assignment, I provided a time-lapse video for you guys down below. So up top, I always give you a nice overview of what I would like you to build. In addition, if you look carefully in the middle section of this page, I have a small little checklist, and I've kind of designed this as a checklist, kind of item type, okay? So these are the important elements that I need you guys to complete for this assignment. So if you look carefully at how I'm structuring all this, there's a couple different things that are important to note, okay? Check it out. Let me scroll down a little bit, and I'm actually going to zoom in so you guys can see what's going on. Whoops, zoomed in a little too much. Okay, so if you look very carefully here, what we got going on is I've labeled very specific things creatively, okay? Whenever you see something that says mesh item in the kind of the checklist of competencies that I would like you to achieve, this is a physical item that you're going to build. This is going to be a piece of geometry that you're expected to construct for this homework assignment. So if you look carefully here, there's 3 things that you're going to be building for this first homework assignment, okay? The actual cup, the lid that goes on the cup, and then a very, very simple scene. And when I mean like a floor or a desk, I'm talking like a square, 2-dimensional polygon. More on that later. We like to place our objects on a ground surface to provide context to the size and the scale of this object. We don't want our things just kind of floating out there in space. When we include a ground plane, we gain shadows, okay? And we'll see that in action here in a minute. Gives us context. We're also going to place some materials on all of our objects today. Very, very simple materials. We're basically just going to change the color of the polygons. You'll see how easy that is in Modo here in a minute. Global illumination, more on this later. This actually used to be a little bit more of an important checklist item in the past. In 601, we physically had to go in and turn on the global illumination system. Now it's just defaulted by on, which is kind of nice. So that makes our job a little bit easier. And then always, 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 in this item list, pay attention to those final 2 elements in the list, okay? This is going to change throughout the semester, so make sure you pay really, really close attention to the frame size and the file type that I'm going to ask you to render this image in. More on that in a minute when we get closer to those metrics, okay? For this first week, there's actually nothing that you have to change. Those are the defaults that come in the system. But in future weeks, these are going to be elements that are going to change. And so it's going to, and we want to change them. We want to be able to change them, okay? Now, as always, you'll find that you're going to see me giving you guys a lot of support, especially for the first 5 or 6 weeks. I know how hard it is to complete these assignments and how difficult this transition is. We're doing something that is foreign to every single person in here. This is difficult stuff, so I've given you some great visual examples of the product, okay? Those 3 images are samples of what other students in the past have done, so that's something to shoot for, which is also pretty cool. And if you really need a refresher as to the sequence of steps that we're going to be performing, I've also given you guys a really handy-dandy time-lapse video that shows me that illustrates the process that I go through to make this cup. So you'll physically get to see me making the cup if you were to watch that video. Clicking on the big play button will access that video instantly, okay? One thing about the time-lapse videos, they're just reference, okay? They're reference for sequence, so they're just an illustration of all the steps. So they're never going to be narrated. They're really a supplement to what we talk about in class, okay? Questions so far? Last thing about the homework assignment and the structure that we're going to be performing within. At the very bottom of every assignment sheet that I issue, I'm always going to tell you how I would like you to submit these assignments to the Dropbox on D2L, okay? For almost everything, for probably 90% of what we do in this class, for both the homework and the lab assignments, you're almost always going to be handed in two separate files. The Lexology project file, which you guys did masterfully with your lab assignment last week, and then also a render of the actual image. So two things. Two things. We got the Lexology project file and the render. Try as hard as you can to recreate the naming convention that I have written down here. I would really appreciate if you used that file structure, that file name structure for all of your assignments. That makes it much, much easier on my end to go through all your projects, grade them, and get the feedback back to you in a timely manner. Okay. If you do one thing for your file names, for all of your files, just put your last name on it, okay? Just put your name on it, okay? It's like an English paper. If you didn't put your name on your English paper, your English professor is not going to know who did it, right? Same rules applied here. I don't have some sort of magical, fairy dust that I can sprinkle over your file names to figure out who made it, okay? So please make sure you put your last name, at the very least, in your file. And then last but certainly not least, I've given you just a big, gigantic button down here that will link directly to D2L so you can submit your assignments on the Dropbox. I was having some issues logging into D2L earlier. I don't know if that's a direct reflection of my laptop, of the network that I'm on. Yeah, it's just not connecting at all today for whatever reason. Okay. Okay, questions on the coffee cup assignment. We're going to go through the mechanics of how to build the coffee cup and the tools that you're going to need to have mastery on to really understand and create this shape here in a second. But are there any questions on to the, yeah?
Do you want us to follow a certain style of it, or do you want us to kind of improvise our own style of coffee cup?
That's a really great question. A really great question. There is, for this first assignment, I'm going to give you a blueprint, basically a tracing guide that you can follow to very quickly create this coffee cup. So this first one, there's going to be a little bit of kind of I'm going to pull back on the reins a little bit and really encourage you to follow the tracing guide that I'm going to give you. But this next assignment, which actually segues beautifully into what we're going to be talking about next week, will allow you an opportunity to really be creative and make something that's kind of unique. So if we were to go back a page and look at the week 3 stuff, working with layers, just real quick here, okay? We're going to be talking about layers and items today in conjunction with the bevel tool and the stuff for the coffee cup. Our homework is going to be a fun little assignment. You're going to be making pretty much a gigantic cork board. So kind of think of like one of these things here, a whiteboard, okay? And on that cork board, you're going to place a number of two-dimensional pieces of paper that we're eventually going to put images on. So we're going to make the poster first, and then we're going to put the image on the poster next week, okay? It's going to be a pretty fun assignment. I think you'll find that you can knock it out pretty quickly. The basic simple shapes that we're going to be learning how to build today are squares. The coffee cup cylinders this week is squares. Okay. At the conclusion of your homework this week for your cork board, this is an example of one of the results. If you go through all the examples of the successful student projects, you'll find that there's a pretty huge spectrum of this type of stuff people have made, including little Mega Man there, which I think is really great. And this I like this one for a number of reasons, but the author of this assignment actually made a whole bunch of individual thumbtacks and then placed them in this pattern to make Mega Man, which I thought was really rad. So each one of those is a little thumbtack that he cloned separately from each other. So kind of neat. All right. More on how to do that later. Okay, we'll come back to this, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. All right? Questions? 10,000-yard description. Everyone good? Kind of understand what's happening? Yeah? All right, let's jump into it, shall we? Let's hit it. All right, I want to open up Modo 601, and we'll get going. Unfortunately, our IT staff has not updated Modo to the most recent version. But everything that we're talking about pretty much for the first 5 weeks are kind of Modo, unspecific. Okay, you can do it in any version of the application that you have access to. So it's really nothing special, nothing specific to a Modo, a version of Modo. Okay, all right. So last week we left off talking about the basic construction practices for making unit primitives. So from that conversation, help me out. What is a unit primitive? I love it. One of the basic building blocks of all 3D models, right? Where can I go in the interface to create a primitive or a unit primitive? We can go to that geometry pull-down menu at the top of the screen, and specifically what we're talking about is this guy. And we have some primitive tools and unit primitive options that will allow us to create those shapes right from our menu system. But what if I don't want to go into a menu? What if I wanted to make a very specifically sized cube or a very specifically sized sphere or cylinder? Where within the toolbar can we go to create all these unit primitive shapes?
The left side of the toolbar?
Left side of the toolbar. And specifically where we're going is the top 2 rows, right? If you look carefully, these rows here gain us access to all of our basic construction shapes. Squares, spheres, cylinders, cones, toruses. We even have a cool thing called the tube tool, which allows us to make, tubes. More on that much later in the course. Okay, but those are all the tools that allow us to make stuff. So these are the initial creation tools. Whenever we're starting the process of modeling anything, we have to figure out what that basic, simple shape of that object is. So this week, we're making a coffee cup. Now, everyone in here has seen a coffee cup. Okay. At one point, I had a coffee cup in my hand for many hours this morning, as I am woefully addicted to the last legal drug on the planet. Okay, and that is caffeine. I just love it. Okay, love coffee. What basic, simple shape is a coffee cup? It's a cylinder. So what tool are we going to start with? The cylinder tool. We kind of need to start looking at the forms that we create in the computer a little bit more critically. Gone are the days where we can just be casual about the shapes that we see in front of us. We kind of have to start programming our brain to see things in basic forms, basic shapes. It's a curse that all 3D modelers must endure. I hate it because I see the world in cubes and cylinders now. Every time I go into a new room, my brain just quickly dissects all the lines, and my brain just starts kind of decoding how I can construct this thing in 3D. Okay? That's the way my brain thinks. It's a curse. I hate it. I really hate it. Okay? It's something that I've gotten so used to doing professionally that it's difficult for me to turn off. You guys will start to adopt this skill as you get more and more experience working in 3D. Okay? So we can make all of our unit primitives and all of our primitive shapes through these first 2 rows. But one of the things that I asked you guys to work really hard on last week was to make a unit primitive. So what's the difference between a primitive shape and a unit primitive shape? Let's localize this question by talking about a cube, right? What's the difference between a primitive cube and a unit primitive cube?
The unit of the perfect cube.
Yeah, the unit primitive cube is a perfect cube, meaning that all 6 sides are identical in size and proportion, right? Let me show you an example here. Let's zoom out a little bit. I'm going to turn on my cube tool just by clicking on the wrong button. There we go. I'll click on this one. There's 3 things from our conversation last week that remind us that a tool is active. 2 of those 3 are currently on the screen. Help me out. What tells us that a tool is active inside the Modo interface?
Orange square.
Yeah. Orange square, and what else? So specifically what we're talking about is the background color of our tool changes to orange. Nice visual reinforcer that something's on. What else? Yeah, our options. Once we activate a tool, this part of the interface in the bottom left-hand corner becomes populated with a whole series of options that allow us to make a pretty cool shape. Okay. Now with all the Modo tools, we have to click in the interface to apply the tool to our scene. So we can turn tools on, but we ain't doing nothing until we click in the interface. That's our way of activating and applying the tool to our scene. This gives us an incredibly powerful workflow because we can enable a tool, we can turn it on, right? We can put the keys in the car, we can turn the car on, but we're not going anywhere until we hit the gas pedal, right? Clicking in the interface is a lot like hitting the gas pedal. It enables the tool to be applied to our scene. So I'm going to left click and drag with my cube tool, and boom, now I can draw a square. Okay? This is a primitive shape. It's not a unit primitive shape because what is it? Is it a square or a rectangle? It's a rectangle, right? What defines a unit primitive? All the same size. All the sides are equal distance, okay? What we gain by drawing the shape within the OpenGL viewport here is the ability to customize our shape along all three axes. So at times, we're going to want to have a rectangle that's pretty shallow in depth. We don't need to have a perfectly square cube. Sometimes a rectangle is where we want to go. Okay? So this gives us an incredible high degree of control over how we initially draw our shapes within the scene. Now, I've gone ahead and drawn a very simple cube here, and if you look carefully at our interface, Modo has given us some really invaluable visual reminders of what we can do with this object. Okay? Look carefully, because right here, we're getting a number of tool handles. Okay? Whenever you see tool handles inside of Modo, that's the machine, the application's method of reminding you that you can do stuff still, okay? Out there in the Modo world, this is called the tool is live, okay? If you go online, you watch a number of video tutorials produced by myself or even the Luxologists down in San Mateo, they often say the tool is live, okay? And we know the tool is live or active or on, depending on how you look at it, by the tool handles that are visible in the scene, okay? These little cubes, these tool handles here, the little squares, what do those allow us to do? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We get to change the shape, okay? Whenever you see a tool handle in Modo, that's the application's method of saying, hey, touch me, okay? Fill around with me. I'm designed to be moved. I want to be moved. This is going to change a parameter within the application that allows me to create a more complex form and a more complex shape, okay? Now, in the center of our tool handle here, the guys down at Modo have also given us a really cool addition. They've given us transform handles in the center that allow us to position this cube upon creation anywhere we want it in the scene, which is kind of nice. Not all applications do this. I wish Maya would do this because it drives me crazy. I got to make a cube, and then I got to drop the tool, then I got to go get the move tool, and then move it to where I want it to go. In Modo, the move tool is automatically turned on in conjunction with all those other tool handles. So we can make the shape that we want and move it into position all in one step, which is kind of nice. Okay. All right. From our conversation last week, how do I deactivate the tool that's currently on? I'm done making my cube. Now I got to turn it off. How do I do that? Spacebar. Spacebar is the easiest keyboard shortcut to remember. And it's the fastest way to very quickly deactivate the tool, although it's not the only way to deactivate the tool. I'm going to tap the spacebar on my laptop here real fast and watch what happens to my cube in the scene. Boom. What happens? Yeah, the handles disappear. They're no longer available to us. A nice visual reinforcer that we've turned the car off, we've gotten out, and we're going to go grab our cup of coffee. Okay? I'm in like a coffee mood right now. I got a funny feeling that all my metaphors are going to be coffee related today. So it's because of Rich. He's seducing me right now with that cup of coffee on his desk. Is it empty? Oh, it's empty! Damn it! I'm joking. Okay. In addition, if you were to look very carefully at the rest of your interface, all of your options over here, the background color of your tool has also been returned to that kind of light or that dark gray color. All of this stuff down here is now gone. So some additional reinforcers that all that junk is now turned off. Okay? All right. So there's our primitive cube. I'm going to zoom out in my scene ever so slightly here, and I want to move my cube away from the origin of the scene. Pop quiz. What's the origin of the scene? 0, 0, 0. So what does that kind of represent? In layman's terms, what does 0, 0, 0 mean? Center of the universe, okay? It's the center of our scene. And specifically, I think, yeah, another additional... Yes, it's the intersection of the X, Y, and Z axis, okay? Whenever we create a shape, more than likely it's going to be generated at the origin of the scene. Now, I was using my laptop last week for my advanced animation class, so I turned off some of the UI components. Let me just very quickly turn my grid back on. Oops, and we can get a nice... There we go. We can get a nice visual as to the location of my origin. What within inside the OpenGL viewport communicates the location of our origin? Yeah, the bold lines, those big dark ones that cruise through that ground plane, that grid here. So what we're talking about, for those of you in the back that they can't see, there are two lines. Okay, it goes that way, another one goes that way. Okay, the intersection of those two lines, so right there basically, we have the origin of our scene. Okay, 9 times out of 10, whenever you start creating something in Modo, it's going to be created at the origin. I want to create a unit primitive sphere, so where do you think the computer's automatically going to place that unit primitive sphere? At the origin of the scene, okay? If I was to place a new object at the origin of the scene, given what you see on my screen right now, what's going to happen? Yeah, my sphere is going to be inside my little rectangle. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen. So I need to move my rectangle away from the origin. Walk me through the process of moving an object within our three-dimensional scene.
With the move tool.
Move tool. Now, I think that's a great, obviously that's where we're going, the move tool. But there's a habit that I want you guys to start forming today. Last week we started talking about an important architecture inside of Modo, and it's the selection architecture, right? You guys remember the golden rule of Modo when it comes to manipulating things? Modo works off of selections. Everything in Modo is influenced by the components that are selected in our scene, or the items that are selected in our scene. It behaves identically to the way Photoshop handles its selection system, right? So here's a golden rule. Whatever is selected is going to be edited. In our case, it's going to be moved. What happens if nothing is selected? Everything gets moved. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So we want to make sure that we start, building that muscle. It's like going to the gym every day. I hate going to the gym. It's a monumental waste of my time. I could instantly think of about a dozen different things I'd much rather be doing than sitting there on that stupid bench doing this. I hate it. I mean, I hate going to the gym. I just don't like it. There's not a bone in my body that enjoys working out. I'm just not that type of person. But I have to, because otherwise I'd be like Jabba the Hutt, okay? Because I'll be honest with you, I like coffee, I like Mountain Dew, and I like Chipotle. Those three things are not really good things to have inside of your daily diet. So I have to go to the gym, and while we're at the gym, we're building muscles, right? Hopefully one day that muscle will come back to do some good. Like I'm hoping one day I'll need to lift a burning car off of a baby or something. That way the muscle, all that work will help, would have paid off for some sort of epic superhero, thing. That's what I keep telling myself when I'm at the gym at 5 a.m. doing this, right? So we're going to build a muscle today, or we're going to start building a muscle today for moving and selecting things inside of Modo, okay? So whenever we need to edit something, I want you to select it first, okay? Now, we talked about the 3 basic components of all 3D models last week. Does anyone remember the 3 components? I'll help you out. Vertices, that's the most simple one, right? What's number 2? Edges, and number 3? Polygons. Here's the habit that I would like to encourage you guys to form. Always be in the polygons mode, okay? Life is better in polygons mode. All the tools behave the way you think they should behave. The selection system's easy. Always be in polygon mode. With that said, how can I enter into polygon mode and select the polygons on my rectangle?
On the options bar above the window, you have vertices, edges, polygons, materials,
I love it. Absolutely. You're perfect. So what we're talking about is all of this mumbo jumbo up here. Okay. These 3 guys allow us to change what's called our selection set. Okay. Right now, my selection set's the vertices, so I'm only allowed to select the verts in my scene.
What is the difference between the polygon and items? Because I was playing around with that, and I noticed that item encompasses the entire
Yeah.
object as well.
And we're going to talk a lot about this later, but just to kind of give you a preview of our conversation that we're going to have towards the end of class today, we have a hierarchy that we're going to be working within. And actually, you know what? I want to do something different. I want to draw this on my computer screen so you can get the notes. So you can get the notes if you're looking at the live stream. Okay. We have a hierarchy that we're going to be working within in our 3D package, and this applies to all 3D packages, not something that's specific to Modo. Okay. Of course, we have vertice. Oops. We have verts, edges, and polygons. Okay. Those are components of a much larger item that we're going to be participating within. Okay. So imagine this is a hierarchy. The parent to all of that is called an item. Okay. So really all of these three things down here, okay, these separate components feed into an item. Okay. Another way you can think of it is the components of a car, right? You have the car, but what makes up a car? Well, you got an engine, a transmission, some wheels, hopefully a rocking stereo, an air conditioner. If you're, I don't have an air conditioner right now, and it sucks. Let me tell you, driving around town in 100-degree weather heat, with a car with no AC is really kind of lame. So hopefully you have an air conditioner in your car, okay? But the sum of all of those parts equal a car, right? You take any one of those out, you don't have a car, okay? So that's really what an item is. It allows us to select the totality of all of those edges, polygons, and vertices. This is going to come back to play a little bit more specifically when we start working with larger scenes. Items give us control over very densely populated scenes. It also allows us to work within a layering system. More on this later. They're really cool. I think you'll dig it. Okay. But for the moment, let's just hang out in component mode and talk about how we can work with all of these shapes. Okay. Oops, excuse me. All right. So I'm going to simply just select my polygon selection set. As a couple of you guys already noted, if a tool isn't on, okay, and how do I know a tool is not on right now? What don't you see in my scene that signifies a tool is not active? No tool handles, right? Start looking at what the interface is giving you back, okay? There's no tool handles. There's nothing down in our tool options area. So tapping the space bar when a tool is off allows you to interactively kind of cycle through all of your selection sets. Handy dandy keyboard shortcut, okay? So if I tap the space bar, specifically watch what happens to this part of the interface up here, okay? Here we go. Let's do it real fast. Tap the space bar. And you can see it cycles through. It's only ever going to cycle through verts, edges, and polygons. So don't think it's going to go through materials and items. I see people getting frustrated with this all the time in the lab. They're like, it's not going to items. They tap the space bar until they break it, thinking that it's going to cycle into items. It's never going to do that. Okay. Okay. So let's go into to polygon mode. FYI, this is kind of a power user shortcut that I myself have gotten into the habit of using. The keyboard shortcuts for verts, if you hit the 1 key, okay, that's verts. The 2 key on your keyboard will select edges, and 3 is going to select polygons. And specifically, those are the number keys on the top row, so not the number pad. The number pad is going to produce a different keyboard shortcut. Okay, I can see a number of you guys hitting the number pad as I look around the classroom, and yeah, it's changing your view, isn't it? So the top row changes selection sets, okay? So now that I'm in my polygon mode, I can go in. I'm going to double click on my shape to select all the polygons on my rectangle. And then I'm going to activate the move tool. I'm going to move it out of the way along the z-axis from the origin of the scene. So earlier, we spent some time making a primitive rectangle using the cube tool. Rock and roll, pretty great. Now I want to make a unit primitive sphere. So this is kind of tying into what we did last week with our lab. Now there are 3 basic ways inside of Modo to quickly create a unit primitive. Give me one.
Hold down control when you use the sphere.
I love it. And this is my favorite way of creating a unit primitive. If you look very carefully at your toolbar, on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll find that when you hit the control key, you're going to get these cool green little rulers popping up next to the icon. Those green rulers basically allow you to create a unit primitive what's inside the active item. So check it out. If I was to just hit the sphere key and zoom out, there's my groovy little sphere hanging out at the origin of the scene. Okay? FYI, every time you make a unit primitive, it's absolutely going to go to the origin of the scene. You don't get move handles like we did earlier when I was working with the cube tool. It's just going to pop to the origin. Okay, so keep that in mind. So there's my cool little sphere. If I double click on it, move it out of the way, let's do it again. This time I want to hold down the control key and click on the donut, the torus. And there's my torus. Okay. Pretty cool. So this is kind of what we went over last week, and this is where we kind of ended up at the conclusion of last week's conversation. So let's talk a little bit about the new stuff the stuff that we didn't get to last week, and it's not too bad. Now that we kind of have a good understanding. I've had to turn tools on, turn them off, selecting different things inside of our scene. So let's start into the process of making our first shape, our project, okay, our coffee cup. Now, if we go back to renderography, there is one thing that I need you guys to download from renderography, and that's the tracing guide. So let's go back to renderography, and bear with me just for 2 seconds. I'm going to go back into the Introduction to 3D Modeling page. There we go. And where we need to navigate is the Resources tab. The Resources tab is always going to include important stuff, if you will, for you guys to download and use during this week's homework assignment. Okay, I've given you a couple things that I want to make sure everyone downloads and saves to their local desktop. Okay, first and foremost, I can't recommend these enough. Okay, Modo shortcuts. Okay, these are all the keyboard shortcuts for Modo. Download them, save them, print them out on your home PC or Mac. Bring them with you to class. Okay, it's going to help if you'd like to have that kind of reference. Okay. In addition, I've also given you a backdrop image for this week's homework assignment. This is the tracing guide that I was talking about before. It's called a backdrop image. In Modo, it's classified as a unique item type that allows us to put an image in the background of our scene. You'll see this in action here in a minute. If you were to click on this file, it should save and download it to your local desktop. Now, if on a PC, the experience is going to be a little bit different. And so let's kind of walk through this together on a PC. Let's see. Gotta remember names here. Don't tell me. Hannah.
Yes.
Not Hannah. Not the person I was talking about, but you'll do anyways. I thought you're okay. I'm learning names. Hannah, Samantha. Yeah, okay. Hannah or Samantha. I can see that you guys are both in the resources section of renderography, or you were. Okay. Hannah has clicked on the link. It's a zipped file. Okay. I like working with zipped archives. It's a handy way of taking a lot of files and collecting them into one file. Okay. If you're not used to working with zipped files, there's a little bit of a hitch in the system that we need to talk about. Okay. So the file name, a zipped archive, is going to end with the extension .zip for zipped. Okay. Now on a PC, or excuse me, on a Mac, if I was to download a zipped archive, it just automatically unarchives it in front of on my desktop for me. There's no real labor involved. On a PC, we kind of have to mess with it a little bit. Okay. So when you click on this image, it's going to give you a little popover. Okay. And it's going to ask you where to save this image. Save it to your desktop. Okay. You'll see that zipped archive hanging out there on the desktop, and you need to do two things, or one thing that has two different steps. Double click on it. Okay, double click on that zipped archive. Okay, was everyone able to download the zipped archive?
Do this. Coffee cup reference, the coffee cup.
Same thing. It's the same process for both, but I'm on the backdrop item. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's the one. That's what we're after. Yeah, we're after an image. However, and this is the part that gets confusing for a lot of people. I can see that you guys are double-clicking on the zipped archive, okay? What you're doing when you double-click on the zipped archive is that you're just opening the archive, okay? What you then need to do is extract the JPEG that's on the inside, or maybe it might be a PNG. I'm sorry, it's a PNG. Okay, you need to extract that image from the zipped archive, and it's really easy to do this on a PC. My suggestion to you would be just to take the file that's in that window and drag it to your desktop. Okay, but you need to extract it. Okay. Think of a zipped archive kind of like a briefcase, if you will. Okay, when you double click on it, you open up the briefcase. Well, we got to get the stuff out of the briefcase before we can use it. Okay, dragging that PNG from your briefcase onto your desktop is going to allow you to work with it in Modo. If you don't do this step, it's no going to work in Modo. Okay, so please keep that in mind.
Okay, so just extract all and leave it on the desktop?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is an extract button that you can go through, or you can just drag that file, drag it on your desktop. That extracts it too. Okay, makes sense? Did everyone get there? Yeah, take those two files, drag them to your desktop.
They're here.
Huh?
They're here.
Perfect.
When I extracted them, they kind of did it in both places. I don't know
Perfect.
why.
That's great.
Okay.
It should automatically extract the files in the exact same location as the zipped archive.
Okay.
That's mission accomplished. All right, makes sense? Did you get it out of there? Did you extract it? So there's the blueprint, right? Just drag it to your desktop. There it is. Now it's extracted. See how it's floating down there? We just need to get that file out of the briefcase and onto your desktop. Alexander, did it work for you? Yeah, you got it. Rich? Yep.
I don't think.
Okay, no, yeah, get out of here. Close it. Close that down. Okay. Do me a favor. Minimize your web browser in the background. And minimize Modo. Because you've done everything correct. You've drag it to the desktop, and that's now you're extracting it, and there's the image separate from the zipped archive. Yeah, good. Okay, cool. Jesse, you're not Jesse. You're. Oh, tell me. You are Jesse. Jesse. Okay. Did you get it? Got it. Mr. Go, did you get it? Not even listening to me. That's great. Awesome. Did you get it? Yeah. Okay. Great.
Oh, would you call me Mr.
Huh?
Oh, my bad.
Yeah. I was talking to your neighbor.
Oh, I thought you were calling me.
All right. Okay. I need to do this as well. I need to get access to my little guy here. All right. Oh, one other thing. There's also these reference images. We'll come back to those in a minute. Okay. But you can also download them, extract them the same way as you did the step previously. Okay. You'll need both of these for the homework assignment. All right. All right, so here's my coffee cup. If I just double click on it here in a Mac, it automatically extracts it and puts the image on my desktop. Okay. Now we have an image here. This is nothing more than an image. Boom, there it is. This is our tracing guide for our coffee cup. Okay. This is how we want our tracing guides to appear. Flat, two-dimensional images without any perspective in the drawing itself. Because this is physically going to turn into a blueprint for us. This is physically the profile that we're going to be using to help create our final shape. Okay? Is this cheating? No, this is not cheating. To use an image to help you make a 3D model, this is totally not cheating. This is exactly how we do it. Okay? A lot of people on day one, they're like, I feel kind of uncomfortable using an image to make a 3D model. No, this is not like, it's not like you're taking, a Vincent van Gogh painting and you're tracing on top of it to make your own artwork, okay? This is not like that. This is exactly how we go through this process. We want to start with blueprints to help us make these 3D shapes. Question?
I was just going to say, any artist, I have a friend that does a lot of metal art, and everything starts on paper.
Everything. So it's an invaluable tool. It really is. Whenever I start any professional project, the first probably 4 to 6 hours on that project is just reference research, where I try to go out and find as many blueprints and schematics for that shape as possible that I can use to build my 3D model. Because I know that the accuracy of my 3D model is going to skyrocket if I'm using photographic reference to help build that shape.
So is it a good idea, if this is the avenue in which you choose to pursue, to maybe take classes on how to read blueprints or anything like that? I mean, is that something that's...
You know, it certainly wouldn't hurt. You know, you're not going to be designing blueprints, but it certainly couldn't hurt. Certainly couldn't hurt. I've never had a formal class on how to read blueprints. I look at everything from a visual perspective. I think a lot of the architectural blueprints that I see pretty consistently, I can decode almost instantly and figure out what the form is that I need to make. If I have any questions, I'll just contact the author of the blueprint. I think a lot of the things that you're going to find online aren't going to have that level of detail. Let me show you what I'm talking about, just so you kind of get a visual example. Let me show you some reference images that I use, that I've used in the past. Okay, so let's go to my models directory here, and I'll use my training because that's probably the best example. Okay, reference. Okay, so here's a folder full of reference images that I use to make the 3D model of my train, and here we go. Here's the actual blueprint of that train, okay? And I just brought this into Modo. This is the background tracing guide that I use to make my train, and I'm off and running, okay? From our reference images, we get a really nice understanding of the proportions of all these different shapes. Because every single one of you guys in here, you guys know what a coffee cup looks like. You've seen a coffee cup. You've held a coffee cup. You probably had a cup of coffee before you came into class today. You know this shape, but 9 times out of 10, when I ask you to make a 3D model of it, it gets off, okay? The accuracy plummets because everyone's artistic vision of what that shape is going to be different, okay? The blueprints are the only way to ensure accuracy, okay? I tell this to all of my 3D modelers, you know, we have to be part engineer, part artist, okay? We really do, because the accuracy, the feeling of reality that is portrayed in our images just skyrockets if we have a certain level of accuracy in the models themselves, okay? Now, these blueprints, these reference images are kind of like the pirate law, okay? They're guidelines. They're guidelines, okay? So you can deviate. That was a stupid joke. I apologize. Like 2 people smiled for that joke. Thank you, Alexander, for being one of those. You can deviate from the blueprints, from the reference. I encourage you to do so. You know, it's just a starting point, just a starting point. Really, it's dependent on what you think the outcome is going to be. Okay, if you wanted to use like my train here as an example, I went on and I added some additional elements on top of the train that weren't in there. Okay, and that's fine. We always want to put our own thumbprint on the designs that we make. All right. So we want to use these references in Modo, and let's talk about the process of getting them into Modo. Now there's a couple different ways to do this, and I'm going to show you my 2 favorite ways of importing these backdrop items and using them as a tracing guide in the OpenGL viewport. I'll show you the hard way first, and then I'll show you an equally hard way, but it may be easier if you're a drag and dropper like I am. Okay. So let's talk about the basic steps of infusing a backdrop item inside of Modo. Now I'm going to go ahead and nuke everything that's on my item here. I don't want these simple shapes. What is the key on your keyboard that you need to hit to delete all of your polygons? Now which delete key?
Insert.
Yes. Okay. It's the delete key over by the insert, the page up, page down, not the backspace key. This is a really important note, especially if you're working on a Mac, okay? Because for whatever reason, and I don't know why, the lovely geniuses down at Cupertino decided to have a backspace key and a delete key, but they named them the exact same thing on their keyboard. So if you look at a Mac keyboard, the backspace key says delete, okay? And then there's another key that's next to your insert key that also says delete. See how confusing this can be if you're a Mac user? Point being, never, ever, ever hit the backspace key, okay? Always hit the delete key.
Is there a shortcut key for Mac laptops which don't have the...
Yes, so I'm on a Mac laptop, and it's actually function backspace key. Yeah. Yep. All right. So I'm going to hold down my function backspace key and delete all the, oops, let me click on the viewport here. There we go, and delete all the polygons from my scene. All right. So let's talk about importing that coffee cup image into your into Modo. Here's kind of the the manual way of doing it, okay? It does involve a couple steps, but you can do this. It's really, really easy. We need to create a brand new empty backdrop item. And the way to do that is to go to the right-hand portion of your screen. Specifically, what I'm talking about is, whoops, that's the wrong one, excuse me, on my arrow. That's still a circle. I'll get it. There it is. We're looking for that one, okay? The Add Item button, that's where we're going. Inside this button resides a pull-down list. Within that list, you're going to find the ability to add a whole series of special things inside of our scene. One of those special things is called a backdrop item. So let me just zoom in here so you guys can see what's going on. I know this environment makes it very difficult to see the projector screen, so let's check it out. So if I go to Add Item, and there it is, Backdrop Item. Okay? What this is going to create is an empty container, if you will, within inside of our three-dimensional scene. You can see that a new item has been created in our item list. It's called Backdrop Item. Let me zoom out so you can see the product of this operation. And there it is. There's your backdrop item just chilling down there in the center of your OpenGL viewport. It's an empty container. There's nothing in it right now. So let's fill that container with the image of our coffee cup, our tracing guide for our coffee cup. If we have our backdrop item selected over here in our item list, and visually what kind of tells us that it's selected? Yeah, background color is a really super dark gray, and the text is this highlight yellow color that we see all over the place, right? With our backdrop item selected, the properties panel down below gives us some options, some specifics on the selected item. Specifically, what we have down here is a section called backdrop. And this bad boy right there, that guy, is an image well. It's going to allow us to interactively add a backdrop item into the scene. So let's do this. What you're going to have to do is click on it. You're going to get what's called the clip browser. And if the guys at Modo are listening to my live stream, please change this. Just give me an open dialog box. I think it's stupid that I have to go through another window to import in an option. Okay. So here's the clip browser. And then we have to go add clip, load image. Okay, load image. And then eventually you get to your standard import dialog box. Navigate to where you unzipped your tracing image, your blueprint. For me, it's on my desktop. For many of us in here, it's going to be on your desktop. And then hit the open button. All right, so this is what I got on my screen. Some of you may have something that looks very similar to that. Mission accomplished. Everything has been imported correctly, but what's going on? Yeah, my camera, my OpenGL viewport camera, is inside the center of this backdrop item, right? Yeah, I love it. The A button will automatically fit the contents of my scene inside my OpenGL viewport. And there we go. Now we can see my backdrop item. Mission accomplished. Okay. We have a tracing guide that's going to sit inside of Modo. Now, backdrop items are special. They're really special. They allow us to very quickly import an image, throw it into the OpenGL viewport, and use that image to help us build our 3D model. However, don't worry about it being rendered. It's not going to be rendered. Okay? So if I was to hit the F9 key on my keyboard and render out my scene, it's just going to show up blank. So rock and roll. That makes it very, very easy to work with. All right. So now that we have our backdrop item in here, we can start building our little coffee cup. Okay? Now earlier we talked about the importance of understanding the role of simple shapes inside of our universe, right? Often, 9 times out of 10, the hardest part about building any 3D model is just figuring out what the first step is, okay? Because I come to you and say, hey Mika, I want you to model me an airplane. She's going to sit there and go, where do I start? You know, there is no airplane tool inside of Modo, okay? We got to make it from scratch, right? So an analysis of the form, of the shape, is going to give us a starting point, okay? And think about it. An airplane. What simple shape is an airplane? Cylinder, okay? Actually, I would take it one step further and say it's a cylinder that has 2 cubes attached to it, okay? Cylinder for the base, 2 cubes for the wings, okay? A couple more cubes for the tail. We get ourselves a start of an airplane, okay? we had to start seeing the world through a whole series of simple shapes. This room was entirely constructed, maybe minus the clock, out of cubes. Okay? Seriously, just take a second, step out of your brain for a second, look around. There's this room, almost every single thing in this room can be made from a cube. Okay? It's very cubic in nature. Of course, minus maybe the clock, the dry erase markers, a couple other cylindrical things, but almost everything, yeah, the lights, the pipes, obviously, almost 90% of this room is a cube. Okay? What simple shape is our coffee cup? It's a cylinder. So it makes sense to start with tool. The cylinder tool, okay, the cylinder tool. It gives us a starting point. We're seeing that simple shape from the beginning. Now that we know which tool to use, let's take it one step further, okay? A cylinder is really created from a perfect circle, right? If we don't have a perfect circle, what kind of a shape do we have? An ellipse, right? A football, right? This would be an ellipse, a football, okay? In certain applications, this is really important, but we want to have a circle, and this is going to be, remember, this is an art class, so use your imagination that what I'm going to draw is a circle, okay? That's an okay circle. That's an okay circle. One of my favorite stories from history, I'm a history nerd, thinking of circles and drawing circles. Small tangent, but hang in there with me, okay? One of my favorite stories from history comes from the, I think it was the Spanish Inquisition, right? In that period of time, the Roman Catholic Church was doing a number of really horrible things, and I believe it was the Pope at the time was asking individuals inside the Roman community to provide an example of their worth. Because if he didn't produce something in the community, if you were not considered worthy, you were then kind of exiled from Rome, and you were not allowed to hang out with all the cool people, right? And so the Pope had this huge inquisition, and they were asking people, to do a whole bunch of things. And he asked an artist to come into wherever he was, and produce and show him why he should stay and hang out with all the cool kids, right? And hang out in Rome, okay? And the artist simply drew a perfect circle. And the Pope said, "You're in." It could be Michelangelo. I might be off a little bit here and there. Perfect circle. You're in. You're in. I love it. That's probably the example that's more historically accurate. So we need to make a perfect circle here for us inside of Modo. Okay. Now making perfect circles is not difficult, but there are a couple steps in the sequence. So we're going to walk through it very, very slowly, and we're going to practice this a couple different times. Okay. Because if you just go over to the cylinder tool and left click and drag in the interface, you're not going to get a perfect circle, right? You're going to get an ellipse, right? Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm just going to move my viewport over a little bit, and I want to activate my cylinder tool, okay? So if I just left click and drag, this is how the tool behaves, right? It allows us to create an ellipse, but there's no snapping guide that allows us to make a perfectly uniform and uniformly constrained perfect circle inside the interface, okay? Everyone follow along with me real fast. This is one of those things that you kind of have to get your hands dirty and you kind of have to practice to be good at it. So everyone jump in and just kind of follow along. It doesn't matter if you're looking at your scene through perspective or if you're in one of the orthographic viewports. This tool kind of shortcut is identical, okay? Now I have the cylinder tool working. I get all my tool handles, okay? Now you can go in and numerically change all of these values down here to achieve that perfect circle, okay? If you look carefully at the options that we have access to when we're working with the cylinder, the radius controls allow us to make a perfect circle, right? And specifically where they are right there. Oops. I'm going to do that all day. I like my arrow. There's the radius on the X and on the Y. If those two numbers are identical, you'll have a perfect circle, right? Because Because let's go back to 10th grade geometry just for a moment, okay? Radius is what?
No, it's circumference.
That circumference is the length around the circle. What is a radius?
Radius is across center to center.
The outside edge to the center. So there's the center point for my circle. The radius is that guy right there, okay? What's the other one called? What's the diameter?
All the way across.
All the way across. So this little guy is radius, and then that little guy would be the diameter, okay? So if the radius for our circles are identical, okay, that way that distance and that distance are identical, okay, we're going to get a perfect circle. So we could go in very, very quickly and just change these values to be identical. And I'm just going to select the number, hit the copy key, so Control-C, and then select the Y value, Control-V, and hit return. Let me zoom out, and you can see that we have now created a perfect circle. Okay?
Do that one more time.
Yeah.
So you go to radius X, right?
Yep. And oops, I hit the undo key too much. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to go into radius X, select the number, 19 feet 4 inches in my case, and I'm going to just copy that value. Control-C. Control-C, just like, you know, Microsoft Word. And then I'm going to select the Y value and paste what's in my clipboard. So Control-V, boom. And if you look closely, now I have the exact same value on both the X radius value and Y radius. And then when I hit the return key on my keyboard, that shape updates to reflect that. And now we have a perfect circle. But that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to get a perfect circle. Let me show you kind of the easier way of very quickly fleshing out a perfect circle. Okay? And FYI, it also works for a perfect cube too, a perfect square. So same process. All right? I want to hit the space bar to drop the tool. And then in my polygonal selection mode, I'm going to select my guy and then just hit the delete key to get rid of it. Oh, one other thing. If you're not on your mesh item, you need to be. Okay? Don't be on your backdrop item. Whenever you're modeling, you always want to be on a mesh item. Okay? If you're not, Modo's automatically going to kind of pick a mesh item for you to place all these polygons on. And it's not going to tell you which one is doing it. So be in the driver's seat and tell the computer which mesh item you want all of your components to be created on. Okay. So let me show you the keyboard shortcut. And it's not really a keyboard shortcut. It's kind of a sequence of shortcuts that allow us to interactively create a perfect circle. Okay. Now you need to do a couple different things in here. Now the first thing that we need to do is obviously turn on the cylinder tool, because that's going to be entry into this world. So I'm going to turn on the cylinder tool, and then here's what I need you to do, okay? I need you to single left click. So left click once in your OpenGL viewport, okay? You'll see the tool handles pop up. So single left click once, boom, okay? Now, move your cursor away from your tool handle, and I mean away. I've moved my cursor way up to the upper right-hand portion of my OpenGL viewport. Once your cursor is away from your tool handles, hold down the Control key on your keyboard. Then left-click and drag. Yeah. Let's go through it again, and I made a perfect circle. Let's do it again, okay? Because there are a couple, it just takes some practice. We're going to make that muscle memory. So to make a perfect circle, turn on the cylinder tool, single left click, boom. You'll get your tool handles. Now, and this is the step that people often miss. You have to move your cursor away from your tool handles, okay? And I mean like physically away, some distance, okay? Once your cursor is away from your tool handles, hold down your Control key, then left click and drag, and you'll get a perfect circle. Okay. Okay. So if you're getting a cylinder, here's what happened. One of two things have happened. Okay. So this is what I'm seeing, and it's Jordan, right? Jordan. Say again? Brandon. I'm sorry, Brandon. Learn the name. So this is what I think happened with Brandon. He turned on his cylinder tool, he did one of two things. He may have kind of left click and dragged initially, and sometimes it's so minuscule and microscopic you don't even see it. Okay, that's one possibility. However, I think probably what happened, Brandon, is that your cursor, you single left clicked as you were supposed to. And my pen is wigging out, so let me do it again. There we go. You single left clicked, and then maybe your cursor was on one of these tool handles. Okay? Make sure it's just like really away from it. I always go some distance away from my tool handle.
I was actually over where it says mesh in the right hand.
So your cursor wasn't in the OpenGL viewport. That's a good distinction that I think I may have overlooked. Move your cursor away from your tool handles, but make sure it's still in the OpenGL viewport.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my fault. I should have made that small little nuance distinction, okay? Because all of the construction that we're going to do is always going to be done in here, okay? Everything else is kind of selection type stuff, okay? Where we're selecting different options, we're entering in properties. If we're making something, our cursor's in the OpenGL viewport. Yeah?
What would be the advantage of doing this over just using like a unit cylinder?
So the question, what is the advantage of making a two-dimensional, almost kind of like a disk, versus making a unit cylinder and going back and editing that unit cylinder? You're going to see the sequence here in action in a minute. Starting off with a very, very simple piece of geometry allows us to achieve the correct proportions pretty early on. And then we're going to take that simple piece of geometry, my little disk, and edit it into a more complex shape. Okay. Now, there's nothing that says that you can't start with a complete cylinder and kind of do it in reverse, but I think the technique is a little bit more organic if you start with a two-dimensional disk, circle, and then bevel it into what will be the coffee cup. It's just less steps,
Can you come and watch what I'm doing? Because I've
Yeah.
done this multiple times, I'm getting the same result.
Okay, let me see what's going on. All right.
And this is where it'll work right this time.
Of course, because whenever I walk over, it works perfectly. I can't tell you how many times that's happened.
It's
Okay,
hard
so
to-
we got it going. Yep.
Okay, so we do this.
Single left
here,
click.
just get it out of the way, right?
Okay. Now leave your cursor over here. Now left click and drag. There it is. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
what Brandon was doing, and this is, I think, another good little tip. Brandon was doing exactly what I asked him to do. He single left clicked. He moved his cursor away, and then he moved it back. Okay, to the tool handles. When you left click and drag, just make sure your cursor is not on the tool handles, and you'll make a perfect circle every time. Okay. I'm going to hit the space bar to drop the tool, and I got a couple perfect circles here, so I'm just going to delete a few of them. There we go. And let's look at what's happening in my scene. If you look carefully at my scene, we have a small little issue. Our backdrop item is over here, right? At the location of what? At the origin. Whenever you create a backdrop item, it's always going to the origin. Where's my sphere or my disk? Not at the location of my backdrop item. They need to be in the same spot, okay? We model everything, and I mean everything, at the origin of the scene. Everything gets made at the origin of the scene, okay? That way, if we were sharing our work with a larger community of artists, they know exactly where to look to find that object. The tools inside of Modo are going to behave a whole lot more intelligently at the origin of the scene. It gives us access to a whole suite of modeling operations that will ultimately make the construction of very, very complex shapes like a car or an airplane or a human body, like you'll see at the end of the semester, much easier. Okay? So we want to have everything at the origin of the scene. But we also need a little bit of precision in this. We need a little bit of accuracy. There's nothing that says I can't select my polygon, fire off the move tool, and do my best to get it at the origin of the scene, right? This is called eyeballing it. You can eyeball it, okay? Pat no likey the eyeballing, okay? I'm working with a computer. It's a fantastic thinking machine, right? I want it to do the thinking for me. I want it to do this high-level math for me automatically. That's kind of why I like to do computer art, okay? So luckily for us, the guys down at Modo have helped us out. they've given us access to a couple commands that will automatically center a selected item, or excuse me, a selected object or item on that, for that matter, at the origin of the scene. Okay, check it out. Where we're going, this requires the polygon to be selected first. And to make it really, really obvious what's going on, I'm just going to simply move it away from the origin of the scene so we can see what's happening. Okay, check it out. Over here in our toolbar, let me zoom in so you guys can see what's going on. Check it out. Right underneath the transform tool. So here's all the move, rotation, and scale tools. If you go down a couple rows, we have center selected. This is a menu, kind of a little list. Within that list, you'll get some options as to which axes you want to center the selection along. So if we just wanted to center it along the X or the Y, we have that option. But we're going to do center all. So that way, my polygon automatically moves to the origin of my scene. Before I hit the all button, I'll zoom out so you guys can see what happens when I click the button. All, boom. And there it is. It's kind of difficult to see on this particular screen, but it's there. Okay. If you look very, very carefully, I can see it just chilling right there inside my reference item. Okay. Mission accomplished. Pretty good. Okay. We're in the ballpark of what we want to do. This little disc ultimately is going to represent the bottom of our coffee cup. Okay, and we're basically we're going to stretch that disc up. Okay, and that disc is at the end of this operation is going to turn into a coffee cup. Okay, so with that said, what do I need to do to my disc? We need to rotate it, and we need to put it down at the base of the cup. Okay. I would rotate first. Makes it a little bit easier to figure out where along your profile you need to place your disc. Okay, just make sure your little disc is selected. And then over here in your transform tools, grab the rotation, and I need to rotate mine 90 degrees along the x-axis. Yours might be different. Just visually see what's going on. Okay, and I'm going to again do my little rotation with a little precision here. And I'm numerically going to enter in a value of -90. We got it? Being off by 0.01 of a degree is going to mess it up.
This tool confuses me.
Okay.
I try to rotate it the way I think. If I grab this, it should go this way, and it doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
So can you write this down?
Sure. You're talking about the rotation tool, right?
That's
Yeah. So if we look at the tool handle for the rotation tool, I can understand the confusion. It is kind of abstract, okay? And let me just, I don't know if I can turn it off, my backdrop item, without dropping the tool. Okay, good. There it is. So if you look at what's going on here, each one of these circles represents an axis of rotation. You'll get a little bit accustomed to working with it as you get more experience in 3D. But just remember that each one of these circles represents an axis. Okay. Now my circle was rotated 90 degrees up like this. So I don't really think about axes. I just think about what I need to accomplish. Okay. I think that may be a good strategy for a lot of the 3D modeling stuff that you're going to be interfacing with over the course of the next semester. Don't think so much about the engineering side of it. Think about, okay, what am I just visually trying to accomplish? Okay. With that said, I needed to rotate my guy like this. So these kind of represent the vectors, if you will, the rotation direction that I need to go with. Okay. Brandon, you're shaking your head. What else can I do to help you to figure this out?
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it's the angle. I am trying to figure out. So.
Yep. Okay. Now I think I can hit undo from you a couple times. Let's.
More than happy.
Yeah. This is an issue that I can see people running into all the time.
All right. So it's not just.
It's not just you, and I think.
Class.
No. Let's see. And that's pretty close, I think. You're right in there, I think, somewhere, right?
Oh.
Or keep going until it looks kind of perpendicular to the grid. Okay. And this is what's happening inside of Brandon's scene. And I can relate to this. This is absolutely a struggle. When you're working inside of 3D modeling packages, and this is all 3D modeling packages. This is not something that's unique just to Modo. I'm going to give you some tough love, and this isn't directed at Brandon, so I'm not saying he isn't doing this, but this is something that everyone needs to do, myself included. You need to slow down, okay? Slow down and be really, really patient and watch what you're doing on the scene, okay? What happening on Brandon, and I'm not saying this because you were going fast or you weren't being patient and you weren't paying attention. I'm not saying that, Brandon, about what you were just doing. What Brandon was doing is he was exploring how the tool worked, and the rotation tool can get you into a corner pretty quickly, okay? The rotation tool isn't going to give you much love. It's not going to give you much help, and this is what happened with Brandon. He was exploring how each one of these worked, and he started rotating it, and then maybe he did that, and then maybe he did that again, and he was like, I don't know what direction this is supposed to be. And then if you look very carefully, now my little disc is completely off axis from the rest of my plane, and I'm never, ever, ever going to be able to rotate this back perfectly again so that it kind of is perpendicular to our grid, okay? This happens a lot, especially when you're first learning how to work, especially with the rotation tool, because once you rotate it out of alignment to the grid, it's very difficult to get it back into alignment with the grid, okay?
I had a question. Say like you're like 3 degrees on the x-axis, and you wanted to rotate using the control key for the 15-degree increments.
Yeah.
I've noticed that it sticks to that same 3 degrees you already had as a guide.
Yeah.
I'm gonna change that to snap to like 0, so it'll always snap from like 0 to 15 rather than 3 to 18.
3 to 18, no. No, yeah. It's going to take whatever values initially in the channel box, and it's going to add 15 degrees on top of that.
Okay.
So that's kind of one of the landmines that you got to be mindful of. Once you get it off axis by a couple degrees, it's going to build on top of those values. Yeah. Yeah, what's up?
Disappeared.
Disappeared. Okay. Disappeared. Let's check it out. Let's check it out.
I think it might be straight up and down. At this point.
Okay. Orbit around your scene. I think your inclination is correct. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanna figure this out.
Let's see what's going on here. Do me a favor. Okay, drop your tool for me real fast, and turn off the visibility of your backdrop item. Okay. All right. Orbit around your scene a little bit more, and let's explore where this thing could possibly be.
Well, it's something's right there.
I can see it. Okay. Now this is what's going on. Now Brandon's also stumbled upon something that I was going to talk about much later, but since we're here, let's talk about it real quick. Okay. When you're working with all surfaces, and I got to zoom out for a moment. I apologize, folks. Okay. When you're working with all surfaces, especially with a two-dimensional surface, we're working, we're not working with a true three-dimensional object yet. Surfaces have a direction, have a defined direction that they face when it's inside of our scene. Some of you guys may have already stumbled upon this. Brandon, this is exactly his issue that he's rolling into right now. You can see my circle right now, sitting there at the origin of the scene, right? It's very easy. That's because my viewport is positioned in a way that is pointing towards the surface, okay? If I was to orbit down, where's my circle? Is it still there? Yes, it's still there. It's just pointing away from us, okay? So it's very much not like a piece of paper, okay? Where you can see both sides of the piece of paper, okay? Every surface has a direction. That direction is called its surface normal. Let me show you an illustration as to what this looks like, okay? You're only going to see that surface if your camera is pointed at that surface normal, okay? There we go. All right. Can you see that orange line coming out of the center of my polygon? It may be difficult to see given the quality of our projector, but there's a gigantic orange line that's going from the center of my surface up that way. that line represents the direction that this surface is facing within inside of my three-dimensional scene. If I'm looking at that shape from the opposite direction of that line, it's going to appear as though it's invisible. Okay? So to Brandon, to answer and to resolve your problem, you probably just needed to rotate that surface 180 degrees so that you can see that shape. Okay? Either rotate it or orbit around to a different perspective in your scene so that you're matching that your camera's perspective is matching the surface direction of your cylinder. Okay? This can be challenging for everyone at times because it's well, welcome to professional 3D modeling applications. It's a professional environment. It really is. That come with some professional tools and some professional workflows. We're just going to have to get used to working inside this architecture. Okay? All right. Let's just keep going. If you're getting stumped on this, we can help you out during lab. But I got a couple things in here I got to talk about before we can take a quick little break. Okay. So you can see that I have my little backdrop item. There's my disc. I want to move my little two-dimensional circle down to the bottom of my coffee cup, something like that, because we're going to build this thing going up. Now, as I look around this room, I can see some experienced 3D modelers out there. This is a new technique, okay? If you're used to starting with a primitive shape and then editing that shape back into something that looks like this is going to be something new, okay? We're starting with a two-dimensional shape, and then we're going to bevel that two-dimensional shape into a three-dimensional shape. It's just a little bit faster. And it also allows us to evaluate the form, the shape of our coffee cup as we construct it, okay? All right, I'm also going to adjust the scale of my cylinder here, of my guy, just to match, because some of you guys have a really big shape. Okay, if you just grab the scale tool, I'm just going to scale it down until it roughly matches the size of my tracing image. Okay, there we go. Spacebar to drop the tool, and I'm on my way. Okay, so that's what we're after. That's what we're after. We start with a simple shape, and then we edit that simple shape into a more complex shape. Okay? We're going to be working, or we're going to be building the remainder of this coffee cup using one tool. Okay? One tool and one tool only. It's called the bevel tool, and it's probably the most useful tool inside of all 3D modeling applications. I love the bevel tool. I make most of my shapes initially with the bevel tool because it's just that rad. It allows us to work very, very quickly. All right? Question, Brandon, you good? You're good. Okay. So here's how to work with the bevel tool. You can actually find this tool in a number of locations inside your interface, but because it's an all-star, because it's kind of the best of, the guys down at Luxology have put it inside of our basic tool tab. And I think that's the best way to understand the role of basic. It's all the rock stars. It's the ones that you're going to be using a lot. Okay? So if we cruise down a little bit here, kind of towards the middle bottom, you can see the bevel tool right there. Okay? So there's the bevel. Okay? Keyboard shortcut B. B as in bevel. Okay? Or B as in boy. Like all tools inside of Modo, clicking on the icon or hitting the keyboard shortcut is going to turn it on. Okay? The background color goes orange. We'll see some tool options down at the bottom. However, has anything changed inside of our OpenGL viewport? No, nothing's changed. It's identical to what we had earlier. The bevel tool requires us, like a lot of tools, to click in the viewport to apply the tool to our scene. So if you're following along, just single left click anywhere in your viewport. Single left click. Don't left click and drag, single left click. The moment we click on our viewport, you can see that tool handles are generated at the center of my little circle. Okay? You have a red one and a blue one. Let's talk about their role and their function inside this tool, because this is how we're going to be interfacing with the options. Whenever you see a tool handle, the first thing you should say, or first thing you should think is, click me. Okay? They're there for a reason. These are the interactive widgets for the tool options. Clicking and dragging on the blue handle is going to produce what's called the shift. Okay? And you can see what's going on. Check it out. Pretty cool. By shifting, we're basically kind of extruding the shape. We're transforming that initial two-dimensional polygon into a three-dimensional cylinder, okay? By left-clicking and dragging on the blue arrow. It's the shift. And if you're following along, and if you look very carefully, every time I left-click and drag on the blue arrow, what we're actually changing is that number right there. So if you wanted to, you could go in and just numerically change that number, and it would do the exact same thing, okay? The red handle is kind of cool. The red handle is going to allow you to do what's called an inset. And if you look very, very carefully at what's going on in my scene, check it out. The red handle is basically just going to uniformly scale that polygon up and down, or larger and smaller, excuse me. That's what the red handle is going to do, the inset. Inset. So the blue handle allows you to pull it up and down. And the red handle will allow you to produce a scale option, bigger and smaller. And it's uniformly making it bigger or smaller, so it's not pinching it along a specific axis. Okay. All right. So that's the bevel tool. It's really easy to work with, and what I'm going to do here is that I'm simply going to left-click and drag on the blue handle until that top polygon is kind of at the base of what I would consider the bottom of the cardboard sleeve. And I'm going to give a little bit of an inset until I kind of match the natural taper of the coffee cup. Yeah?
Real quick, I need to change the orientation of my disc. How can I flip it 180 because my blue handle's pointing down?
Yeah, good question. If your blue handle's pointed down, so what tool are we into?
Right now I'm on bevel.
Yeah, so hit either drop the tool or hit undo until the bevel tool goes away.
Okay.
And you kind of zeroed in on it. We need to change the orientation of our disc. So what tool are we going to use to do that? Rotate. Now to do it with a little bit of precision.
Axis rotate.
Say again?
Which one, rotate or axis rotate? Because I have an option. Right?
Yeah, if you're holding down, was it the shift key, it gives you axis rotate, right? Just regular rotate. Regular rotate. Or hit the E key on your keyboard, if that makes it any easier, okay? And what I would suggest, Brandon, is rotating it numerically, using the options in the lower left-hand corner of your screen.
Okay. And how would I rotate that? Just take it.
Just-
50% off?
Just type in 180,
180.
and it's going to flip it 180 degrees. Yeah. That's the easiest and fastest way to get things cruising in the right direction. Okay. Well, let's get this problem solved. It's still doing it. Okay, let's see what's going on. It's still inverted. Okay.
I change the Y
Yeah, okay.
axis.
Drop your tool, right? Because we don't want to be in the bevel tool. Fire off, rotate.
Okay.
There we go. Now, rotate it 180 degrees. Well, this is the issue that you were running before, right? You're trying to figure out which one of these handles to left click and drag on.
And then, whichever
Yeah.
one is going to be the color of the.
You got it. Now, just visually, what do you need to do?
I need to flip this thing upside
So
down.
like that,
Exactly.
right? Which handle do you think was going to yield that result? Give it a try. See what happens. Just left click and drag on the green. What's happening? It's just spinning like this, right?
Right, I don't understand
Okay.
why it does that if that's the direction that I need to change it.
It's not the direction you need to change it. Okay. You need to change it along the red one to go like that. There you go.
Okay.
Yep. And I'd do it. Hit undo for a second because I can see.
I saw something on there too.
Yeah, if you're not on the handle, okay, if you just click here, it's going to rotate in all three axes at the same time. Danger, danger, danger. So we want it along the X, okay, the red one.
The red one.
The red one. There we go. Cool. And we can do it with a little bit of precision if we just type in 180 degrees
Okay.
over there.
All right.
That way it's just perfectly parallel to the grid. Great job. Looks nice. Okay. Let's keep cruising here real fast. I mentioned before that we're going to be using the bevel tool to construct the entirety of the shape. We've just created the first little bit of this. Now we need to start changing our model to create the cardboard sleeve, okay? We're still going to use the bevel tool. Notice that on my screen, I've already dropped the tool. I need to edit that top polygon. What do I got to do first? Select it. Who said select it? Get the gold star for the day. I totally want to make like one of those like kindergarten boards, like everyone's name on it, and then if you do something like right, you get a gold star for that day. Is that like incredibly condescending for like college students? Because I think everything can be boiled back to what we did in kindergarten in life. Okay, I think that'd be fun. Okay, so we're going to select that top polygon, and once again, I'm going to activate the bevel tool, the B key, and then left click in my viewport to get my handles. This time, check it out. Oops, excuse me, I zoomed in too far. If I was to pull up and do a shift, check it out. We're getting a new row of polygons, okay? Now we've got a new row of polygons here. We can see that we have an edge that runs around the total circumference of our cylinder, and we're getting a new shape, all right? However, do I want my shape to go up? We're making the lip of the cardboard sleeve, right? So I need it to go out. That's essentially the role of the inset. I'm going to hit undo, Control Z on my keyboard, and check it out. I'm going to grab my red handle here, and I'm just going to pull straight out, okay? And if we look at our shape from below, we're kind of creating like what I would call the brim of a hat, maybe, okay? A little lip that runs along the bottom of my cardboard sleeve. The bevel tool basically allows us to extend our model one row of polygons along the profile of our cylinder. Okay? One row of polygons at a time. So I've brought it out. Now I need to go up a couple stories, right? I need to go up so I can start forming the outside of my cardboard sleeve. To do that, I need to reactivate the bevel tool and apply it to my selection again. So I'm going to drop the tool. I'm going to keep my selection, so I'm not going to click off of my mesh. All right? And I'm going to reapply the bevel tool. So I'll click on the B key again, click on my viewport to get my tool handles, and which one of my tool handles am I going to use this time? The blue one, so I can shift those polygons, those new polygons up. Whenever you apply the bevel tool, you're absolutely going to add new polygons into your scene. Okay? And now I can pull up on that blue handle until that new row of polygons just kind of matches the topmost edge of my cardboard sleeve. What do you guys think, though? Something looks a little off. What do I need to do in addition to using the blue handle?
The red handle.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because that red handle allows us to scale the polygon in and out, right? So I want to use a little red handle action too. Just pull that guy out until it roughly matches the tracing guide. Now we've been doing a lot of clicking up until now, right? A lot of clicking. We've been selecting it, hitting the bevel tool, click to apply the tool, then we click to grab the tool handle, then we drag up, hit the space bar, right? Then we click to apply the bevel tool, click on the handle. I mean, it's like we're just clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking. What we are physically doing is repeating the exact same process over and over again, right? We're repeating the exact same construction technique just with different values at each stage, okay? It'd sure be nice if I could repeat the command and not have to, click to apply the tool, mess with the tool, drop the tool, click on the tool, apply the tool, mess with the tool, drop the tool. That's just an endless loop of clicking, right? So here's how we do it. We can repeat the application of this tool within our scene. Notice right now, before we go any further, that my tool is still on. I still have my selection. I can still see my tool handles, okay? It's still on. To repeat any tool, okay, to automatically reapply the tool to our scene, hold down your Shift key on your keyboard and single left click away from the tool handles, okay? So don't left click on the tool handles. Hold down the shift key, and I'm going to click in the empty part of my viewport over here. Boom. Now, did it look like anything happened? No, and this is the landmine of working inside of Modo.
Actually, the bevel tool.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
Bevel tool came on.
It was already on. It was already on.
Okay.
It's not going to give you a whole lot of visual feedback that the tool has been reapplied. The surface still looks the same. The tool handles still are in the same orientation. The only thing that changed were these values down here. They zeroed back out. That's the only visual reminder that you've reapplied this tool to our scene.
You held the shift and you clicked in a blank area of the viewport.
Bingo. Bingo.
Okay, zero down, yeah.
It is zeroed down. Now that I've reapplied the tool, check it out. I can make a new row of polygons, okay? However, I just hit undo there. I don't want to go up. I kind of want to do the opposite of what I did down here to make the lip of my cardboard sleeve. I'm going to pull in on my with my red handle. You can kind of see what's going on, okay? Now, I need to go up, but if I was to pull up like that, here, I lose that lip, right? This is where reapplying the tool in our scene comes into play. So once again, I'm going to reapply the bevel tool. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click away from my tool handles in the empty part of the viewport. Click. Now I can pull up with my blue handle and that row of polygons has remained. And I'm simply just going to bring this up until it matches the bottom edge of my coffee cup. I'll also pull out with the red handle to get that taper. Rock and roll. Now, no coffee cup would be complete without an opening. You're going to have some sort of container for the actual liquid itself. So now we're going to bevel down, okay? We're going to do the exact same thing that we were working with before. The steps and the sequence is identical. The direction is going to be the opposite, however, okay? How do I reapply the tool in Modo? Shift click, shift click, shift click, okay? So I'm going to hold down the shift key, click in the empty part of my viewport to reapply the tool. Now I can use this red handle to give me a little inset in. And what we're doing here is kind of visually determining the thickness of our cup, okay? That little row of polygons are right around the outside. So what we're talking about are like all of these guys. These polygons in here are determining the thickness of my cup. All right? So I'm going to shift click again. Boom. Check it out. Now I can draw that, I can bring that, that polygon down to form the inside of my cup. Just be mindful, if you go down to the bottom here, be mindful that, you know, about the size of that polygon. You can kind of see it here. If you look very, very carefully on my scene, you can see that, you know, it's hanging outside. We don't like this, okay? This is bad, okay? I need to make that center polygon much smaller so that I don't get that kind of outside penetration. So a simple inset will give me what I'm after. And that's a darn good looking coffee cup. Okay. Spacebar to drop the tool, I'm done. Mission accomplished. Pretty good. Questions? Questions so far?
How long does it take you to build this coffee cup if you're just doing it?
About 10 seconds.
Well, do it.
Okay. Here, I'll even start from scratch. Maybe not 10 seconds, but maybe 20 seconds. Okay.
Still.
All right. Now you've thrown down the gauntlet, and I feel as though I have to show you. Okay. Mark, get set, go. Oops, I even messed up. I'm doing with this. See, I normally would do this with a mouse, not a stylus, and that's adding to the problem here. And I'm also doing this on a laptop, which I don't often do a lot of production work on with an odd keyboard. Excuses, excuses. But still, so what, 45 seconds instead of 20, I apologize. But not long at all.
30 seconds with that.
Yeah, done. This is the power of the bevel tool because it allows us to very quickly flush out a more complex shape from a very, very simple beginning. Because we just started with a two-dimensional circle.
Once we bring our sphere back down to the, our cylinder back down to the bottom, do you want us to close it off so it has a base as well?
Don't worry about closing it off. Yeah, because if you look at the underside of my guy here, yeah, it's got an opening. I'm going to deactivate the visibility of my backdrop item by clicking on the little eye icon. And you can see that I have an opening. Okay? Don't worry about that opening. Okay? Don't worry about it. For today, don't worry about it. All right. Questions, questions, questions. All right. So for the remainder of this project, I'm going to leave you to make the lid. You're on your own for the lid. But what basic shape is the lid? It's a cylinder. You're going to do the exact same thing that we did for the base of the cup for the lid of the cup. I've given you the profile. You know the steps in the sequence already. It's just in a different shape. Okay? Let's take a break. Let's take a break. Get up, stretch your legs, use the restroom. Let's take a break. Small, like short little 10-minute break. Okay?
Can you show me what I'm doing wrong with this?
Absolutely.
Because I'm
Let's take a look-see here.
backwards.
Upside down and backwards. All right. All right, all right. Let's see. I want to turn the mic off just for a second to change my batteries. Okay.
I have one question for you.
Yeah, what's up?
I noticed this when I was making my coffee cup. I zoom in on a really, to get something super exact, like for the width of the cup sleeve or something like that. I noticed that if you clicked, like you say, I selected the move tool and then I clicked somewhere else, it would move the tool position.
It would, yeah.
But it also would change how the tool behaved if it wasn't centered perfectly. So if I was doing like a scale or something,
Yeah.
it would do like weird rotation
Yep.
or something like that. Is
Yeah.
there a way to get that tool centered to a position where it's in my viewport? Because if I'm zoomed in and it's centered to the thing, I don't
Something
see
else,
it.
you don't see it, right?
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is a structure that we'll have a lot of conversations on in the future, but it's called your action center, and that's really what's determining the location of your tool handles when you click in the viewport, okay? So for example, here's my little guy. If I was to just select it, hit the move tool, there they are, but if I click off of the viewport, I can change the location of all that, right? What you were specifically working with was the scale. And so if you were to like click over here, now it's going to scale to that location and give you kind of a wonky result. So if we zoomed in, my tool handles are off scene. You know, I can't, you know, I would not recommend just left clicking to get them back because you don't know where they are, right? You don't know if they're centered. So here's how to turn that off, okay? At the top of the screen, we have this Action Center pull-down menu. And this is going to allow us to change the behavior of our action centers. And there's a whole bunch in here. By default, it's on, it's either off or on automatic, okay? If you ever want your tool handles to go back to the center of your selection, put it to automatic. It'll pop where it needs to go. If it's still not going where you want it to go to selection. And it'll automatically place your tool handles at the center of whatever is selected. This is a little bit of, so here's selection. This is good and bad. You just got to make sure that you change it back to automatic, otherwise you'll get some funky results in the future, okay? Personally, I think the tool handles are tool handles and action centers are one of maybe the top 10 features inside of Modo. The Modo modeling tools, at least. Okay. All right, now the hand is back. We can begin. I'm learning names. I'm learning names. You know, I like to learn all the names of all my students. All right. Yeah, what's up? Hold on a sec. Don't tell me your name. Don't tell me? Don't tell me. You gave me a hint, but I'll take the hint. Starts with an A?
I'm just kidding, it starts with a B.
Oh, you were trying to throw me off. Brandon? Not Brandon. He's Brandon. So you must be, tell me.
D.
D as in dog?
Yeah.
Darren.
Yep.
All right. Darren. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, how do you make the bottom?
So if you wanted to fill the bottom of your polygon,
Yep.
you can. Really, really easy. Not required, but if you really want to, it's super simple. Okay? There's the bottom. Yeah. Yeah. You could make a perfect circle and just pop it in there, but we can do better than that. Okay? If we go into edge mode, which we really haven't spent a lot of time in today, and specifically I haven't spent a lot of time in there, you can double click on that edge. See it when you double click on it, it selects what's called a loop, which are all of the edges that are connected to each other. Okay? A loop goes all the way around the model and connects back onto itself. And then hit the P key, P as in polygon, and it will fill that edge selection with polygon. But you don't have to do that. Yeah. Jesse. What's up? Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Do me a favor. What I want you to do real fast is I want you to delete what you have. Okay. We're going to start over. Okay. Now, your big problem here is that you were in item mode. Okay. Check it out. Let's make a new item. Go to over here where it says add item and then mesh. Cool. Now, go to polygon mode for me. All right. There we go. And let's make a cylinder or a circle.
It wasn't polygon mode. I did this last time.
Okay. Always, always, always be in poly mode. Ah, okay. Therein lies your problem. Let's do it one more time. Okay. So, yes.
I have no idea.
All right. But it didn't make it. Let's decode what you just did. Okay. Now, what you're doing isn't in itself bad. Okay. You're just centering, hit return for it to confirm that. There we go.
Also, selection controls on the input.
Okay. Now, drop your tool. Oh, okay. Hit undo. Drop your tool. Drop your tool. That works too. Okay. Grab that polygon, and where does it need to go?
It needs to go. Oh, by the way, this picture's off center.
Huh?
Like, I have it on 0, 0 right now, and it's
Yeah.
off center.
Might be off center by a little bit, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. Where does that polygon need to go?
Currently needs to go down.
Down. So what tool do you need to have on? Yes. Good. There you go. Now, does it look too big or too small? You're done with the move tool, right? There you go. Drop the tool. Drop the tool. Perfect. Spacebar will also allow you to drop the tool.
Yeah, but this makes it easier. Also,
Okay.
big bugbear about this, every time I press undo and I've only used the tool once, it switches back to the tool I used before. Because that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay. So is that polygon the right size?
No, it isn't.
No, it is not. So what do we need to do to it? Ah, nope, stop. No, no, no. Okay. That one.
Well, isn't this all three combined?
It is, but the one thing that you don't really get access to when you use that first one is that blue circle in the center. That will uniformly scale it up.
As far as I know, you.
Aha, look, there it is. There's that blue circle. That's what we're after. Because, okay, now you're clicking on the blue cube. Orbit it around a little bit. Look at your scene from a little bit more on the top.
Oh, that one, okay.
Yeah, there we go. Now left click and drag on that one until your circle matches the dimension of, I think that's close. That's good. Yeah, I think we're in the ballpark. Okay, drop your tool, because we're done with it, right? Awesome. Now we can go grab the bevel tool. How do we apply the bevel tool to our scene?
That's where you lost me.
Yeah, single left click. Boom, now we got some handles. Yes, good. What else do we need to do with it?
Well, if it
Yeah, good, okay.
Really? What?
Yeah,
Okay, so why didn't that work on the thing last time?
I don't know. Okay, we need to repeat the tool, right? And reapply the tool to our scene so we can make that cardboard sleeve. Okay, let's try it again. This time, what I want you to do is hold the, no, okay, now reapply the bevel tool.
I just, right, because I'm silly, but I didn't have to keep on repeating things.
Yeah. But there's a shortcut that allows us to repeat something without having to drop the tool and reapply it. Do you remember what that shortcut was?
Again, that's where you lost me.
If you hold down the shift key, okay, now move your cursor away from your tool handles and click. Do it again. There you go. Now pull up on the blue handle. Okay, it looks like you know what you did? Hit undo for a second. I think one more time. There we go. Apply the bevel tool. Clicky click. Where are we going with it? We're gonna make that little rim. Yes, good. Okay, now we're gonna practice repeating the tool. Okay, repeating the command. So hold down the shift key. Okay, now move your cursor away from your tool handles. Now you've gone too far. Put it in like over here. It's still got to be in the OpenGL viewport. Yeah, now you can click.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yep. Now pull up on the blue handle. See what you get. Awesome. Yeah, good, good.
There's certain things this entire console does. Why?
There you go. Now we want to make the top edge of the cardboard sleeve. So what are we going to do?
What was the thing for killing it again?
Or repeating it is shift.
Right, killing it so that it doesn't try to move this again.
Hold down the shift key. There it is. Now, we probably didn't want to go up initially, right? We probably wanted to go horizontally in so we can form the top edge of the coffee cup, right? Drag the blue arrow down. Okay, keep going so it's kind of flat with that top edge, right in there, perfect. Now, use your red handle to make the top lip.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, there you go. It's a small little lip. Now, if we do that, we ruin the lip, right? So what do we got to do?
Put back on center. Kiss eyeball in it. Ooh.
Good. Oop. We probably don't want to bring it in anymore, right?
It was looking a little bit off to me.
There we go. Cool. Good. That's the basic process, okay? You'll do the lid the exact same way. Alrighty, folks, let's get back together as a class. There's a couple more things that we got to talk about before we can skedaddle today, okay? We've got about an hour left in class, and so there's some additional content that we need to go through, all right? One of the things that I wanted you to do for your homework was to produce some very, very basic colors for your polygons, okay? I want, right now, these are the colors of my polygons. I want maybe the cardboard sleeve to visually look different from the rest of my coffee cup, right? For your lid, you may want to have your lid be a separate color, okay? So here's how we do it. Modo begins and ends with selections. Everything stems from initial polygonal selection, right? So if I wanted to change the polygons that make up the cardboard sleeve for my coffee cup, what do I have to do first? Select them, okay? We've got to select them. So I'm going to go into polygonal mode real fast. And I'm simply going to use my viewport navigation controls to select all of my polygons. I'm left clicking and dragging now. And I'm just going to grab all these guys. Okay? Grab these ones up here at the top. Just holding down the shift key to add all these polygons to my selection. Okay? Just being careful now, just watching what I'm doing, ensuring that the polygons that I select are the polygons that I want to keep. Go. Something like that. There we go. So now I've selected all the polygons around the outside of my coffee cup that make up the cardboard sleeve. Yeah?
When you're in your selection mode, say you select a polygon up here on accident, how do you back up one polygon or two polygons?
I love it. So let's remember our selection system from last week. Holding down the shift key will allow us to add polygons to our selection. What do we have to press to subtract polygons from our selection? Hold down the control key and click on that polygon. You got it. And that's going to subtract it from our selection. I'll give you a small little preview here. So if I didn't, let's say I selected, I don't know, the bottom one on accident. Boom, I don't want that bottom one. Holding down the control key and clicking on it will deselect it. Yes, sir. Question? Just stretching. Yeah, all right. Now that I got my selection, I can add our first material. Now, the keyboard shortcut to apply a material to our polygonal selection is really easy to remember. It's just the M key. M for material. When you hit the M key, there it is, you're going to get this little popover. Let's talk about it for a second. Okay. What we're doing is creating a custom material for just the polygons that we have in our scene. We need to give it a name. We're going to have a couple of them because I want to have one color for my cardboard sleeve, another one for my lid, maybe another one for the tabletop that I'm going to make. So each material must get its own name. Okay? So I'm going to name this one cardboard. Like that. Clicking on any three of these colors, so clicking in this section here, will bring open your operating system color picker. Okay? I'm working on a Mac, so I get my little box of crayons. And I love my box of crayons. It's great. Here's kind of this, the Mac OS and just Macs in general are all they are all about cup holders, right? You guys kind of understand the whole cup holder philosophy of design. It's like cars, Some car companies really want to make the form of the car, the experience of being on the inside of the car much different than others, so they put cup holders everywhere, right? Little special things. Do you really need a cup holder? Or do you really need a cup holder? Do you really need like 16 cup holders on the inside of your car? No, you don't. You need 2, okay? But some cars have a bunch. They're extra things. They're fluff, okay? Here's a little fluff thing in the Mac OS that I've always found very entertaining. When you first install the Macintosh operating system on your machine, if you were on the first day of the installation, if you were to open up your little crayon box, your color picker, all the crayons would be like perfectly straight, as if they were brand new in the box. And then I think the next day, the tips of the crayons, they round, so they look as though you've been like used them a couple times. It's a cup holder thing in the Mac that I just love. It makes me smile. Anyways. All right, so I want to pick a color. I want my cardboard sleeve to be red. Or maraschino is the name of the crayon that I'm using. And then I'm just going to hit OK. Don't worry about the rest of the stuff next week. We're going to talk exclusively about the shader tree and applying materials. But just for the day, there it is. Select some polygons, hit the M key, choose a color. Ensure that you're giving it a good name. Let's do it again. I'm going to select all of these guys going around the top. Let's grab all of these guys. There we go. I'll even grab that one down there. Missed one on the inside. And I'm going to hit the M key. What color do you want my cardboard cup to be? So this is going to be the cup, so let's give it a good name. I'll make it blue just to make it really easy and obvious for you guys to see what's going on. Hit OK. We're on our way. Oops. Looks like I missed one, though. I want that polygon right there to be blue. Do I have to create a new material for it? No. I can recycle the ones that's already been created. Still requires us to perform a selection. So if I select it, what keyboard shortcut applies a material to a polygon? M. M. M for material. Now this is kind of cool. If you look very carefully, the reason why I've been asking you to make unique names is that if the names are different, we can reapply a material that's already existing to any new polygons in our scene. So check it out. Notice that in that name field over here on the right, it's an arrow which denotes a list. If I click on that list, there's cardboard, okay, or cup. Which one do I want, cardboard or cup? Cup. We'll hit OK. It goes blue. Okay, so we can recycle the materials that have already been created. Let's do the same thing for the bottom. Grab all these. Hit the M key. Apply them to the cup material that I already created. Now I got a blue and red cup. Okay? The M key. That's as far as we're going to take it today. We're going to have very lengthy conversations about what in the world we're doing here very shortly. That's as far as we want to take it. Okay? As soon as you do, as soon as you apply very simple materials to your cup, to your lid, and to the desk, the tabletop that you're going to be creating for your scene, fire off a render. From last week's exploration of the rendering engine from our lab exercise, how do we do it? Where am I going within the Modo interface to fire off a render? We're going to go into the render tab, okay? And we're going to keep it pretty basic, keep it pretty simple, okay? Where I'm going inside the Modo interface is right there, okay? That tab, the render tab. If I click on the render tab, this is our rendering environment. Small little refresher from what we went over last week, okay? The render environment is broken up into 4 major sections. This top guy over here, now this is a 601 layout. If you go to the design lab at main campus and you work with the newest version of Modo, this has changed a little bit, but ultimately this is what's going on. Let me give you a little tour. This is a preview window, okay? So anything that you've seen here is going to be a preview of the final render. Preview, okay? This window over here is an OpenGL representation of our preview window. And then all of this stuff down here, this is just a regular work environment for us, okay? The most important window that we have to work with inside of the render environment is this guy. This is what we need to focus on, because this is a window into how the computer is going to draw this image when we hit the button. Now right now, if you look very closely on my screen, it's red. All we see is red. I don't see a coffee cup yet. What's going on? Does anyone know what's going on? Samantha. My camera's, she's right, my camera's in the cup right now. I'm zoomed in so far that the only thing that my camera sees is the red of the cardboard sleeve. Okay? So what do I need to do? Zoom out. Zoom out. Now, what's our handy dandy keyboard shortcut for automatically fitting the contents of our scene in our window? The A key comes home to play in this exact same environment. If I put my cursor inside the preview window and hit A, boom, there's my coffee cup. FYI, this is probably one of the reasons the Modo rendering engine is one of the most powerful rendering engines on the planet. All of those fantastic keyboard shortcuts that we've been using to navigate around our OpenGL viewport, we can also use those exact same keyboard shortcuts to navigate our camera in the preview window. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to zoom in real fast, or I'll just make my preview window a little bit bigger so you guys can see what's going on. There we go. So I'm going to hold down my Option key, Alt for you guys on the PC, and I'm going to orbit around my scene. Pretty cool. Alt Control will allow me to zoom in and zoom out, and of course Alt Shift will allow me to pan. So the same viewport navigation controls that we've been using to orbit, pan, and zoom our OpenGL viewport can also be used to compose the shot that we're about to render, to compose the camera that's eventually going to be drawing our image. Okay, so there's my little coffee cup. I need to draw the image. This is just a preview of the final render. It's not the actual render itself, okay? To fire off a render, it's really quite easy. At the top of the screen, there's a gigantic button that says render. That guy. Right there. That's the render button. Okay? You can, in addition, you can also go to the very tippy top of the screen where our pull-down menus are and find render. The keyboard shortcut to render your scene is F9. Oops, I'm sorry. It's F9 right there. So let's just fire it off. This is the Modo rendering environment. Boom, done. Okay? Okay. Now, we've rendered our scene, and it looks pretty good. My blue and red coffee cup, rock and roll. But I haven't done the most important thing inside of the entire render workflow. And believe it or not, this is something that people often miss. I want to encourage you not to miss this crucial step. It's kind of buried in the lower left-hand corner of the render window, and that's save the image. Okay, you physically have to save this picture to your computer. Okay, if you don't save it, it's gone forever, gone, can't get it back. Well, actually, you can get it back, but you just want to make sure you save it so it's permanently saved on your computer. So, did you render your scene? Okay. So if you've rendered your scene and you're ready to save your image, clicking on that button will bring open your OS Finder window. Okay. Make sure you know what it's named. Okay. Make sure you know what your file is going to be named. Make sure you know where you're saving your file. Okay. Only you can prevent forest fires. I don't know where your stuff is saved. So if you come and ask me, where did it save? I'm going to go, I don't know. Where did you tell it to save? Okay. There is no automatic location that it saves things to. It's wherever you tell it. In addition, I would like you guys to save everything inside this class as a JPEG. Okay, JPEG. Not JPEG 2000. You know, I don't even know if they are, to be honest with you. I've never used any of the JPEG 2000. I'm sure they have a role if they're on that list, okay? But if we're going to keep it really, really easy, render everything as a JPEG, okay? All right. When you're finished, also ensure that you save your Luxology project file. By going File, Save, okay? You're going to need two things for this assignment. Your Luxology project file. Luxology project files end in an extension that's .lxo. If you look very, very carefully at my screen here, you can see down here at the bottom it says Luxology scene file. That's what we want. And if you look at the file name, it says untitled.lxo. That's the extension for all Luxology master project files. Just make sure you're saving that and your JPEG for your render. Mission accomplished. Okay?
Can you go over that one more time where the Luxology file I was rendering?
File save. Just like you're saving a Microsoft Word document. The file menu that shows up at the top of the screen, about 3/4 of the way down the list, you'll see a save command. So top of the screen where it says File, Save. Keyboard shortcut is going to be Control-S, just like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, any other computer app they're used to have it. The guys down at Luxology are very aware of the keyboard the common, kind of universal keyboard shortcuts that people use in other apps, and they've brought it home to roost. Okay.
Is this right?
Did you do file save?
Yeah, and it says Luxology.
Yep.
What's on this file?
So this is your master project file. This contains all of your scene stuff. So this is the only file that has all your polygons, your materials.
The history of the entire
Yeah,
creation.
it is your 3D object. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a way to kind of butt up an object against another object's flesh
Yes.
without just eyeballing it?
It says
Yeah, absolutely.
Not gonna do that till later.
We're not going to get into that till later. Yeah, but the answer to your question is yes. And there's a really, really, really awesome snapping system inside of Modo that allows you to do it almost instantly.
Okay.
It's awesome. But the answer to your question is yes. If you want more information on that, I would encourage you to go to Modopedia. I think, if I remember correctly, let's just navigate to there real fast. I think in the modeling section on Modopedia, they have videos. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Interface, okay? And it's right there. This is the one that I want you to look at, Snapping Basics, okay? I don't remember if that's one of my videos or not. Do Snapping Basics, and then also check out Edge Snapping. That's another one to go, the one to work with, okay? Yep. Those are winners. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
How do you paint it again?
Paint it, so applying the material, right? We're applying the material. So remember, materials begin and end with a selection. So just make sure you select a polygon or series of polygons. What keyboard shortcut do we need to employ to apply a material? M. M for material. Give it a good name if it's a new one, and then click on any three, click on the color swatch here to get your OS color picker and pick a color. No problem. Okay.
And that should automatically give
Hmm?
you the color. On the selected polygon.
Say again?
On the selected polygon.
You got it. You got it. Question, Raphael?
Is there a way to default new primitive into its own mesh? Into a new mesh?
Ooh, I don't know if you can default it,
Or
but
could you like manually make a mesh first and then put one in?
you can. So we've been holding down the control key, right?
Correct.
If you'll hold down the shift key, it'll put it into its own mesh item.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Darren, go ahead.
Our Luxology file?
Say again?
Do we name our Luxology file? Do we?
Keep going. Yes, name it. Name it, okay? If you look at the assignment sheet that I posted on Renderography, I give you a good starting point for how I want you to name all these files. You can find the naming conventions under Homework. Then at the bottom of the page, it says under the All Finished with Your Homework section. Whoops, excuse me. I don't know what happened there. There we go. All Finished with Your Homework. I give you kind of an example naming file that I would like you, or the example of how I would like you to name your file.
But I'm not understanding, I guess, what Lexology and all this other stuff, I'm not understanding what I'm saving right now.
So your Lexology model file, or Lexology file, your LXO, is your model. It's the only file that you save permanently on your hard drive that contains your vertices and your polygons. Okay? So in many ways, it is your master project file that contains everything that we just did. If I was to close down Modo without saving it, all that work would be gone. It's kind of like your Microsoft Word document. You write a paper. If you don't save that paper, poof, gone. Okay? Saving it in its in that special file type preserves all that work. It's your master file. It's your Photoshop document. It's your Microsoft Word document. It's your PowerPoint document. It is your work. Okay? Answer your question, Darren? You good?
I'm good.
Okay, good. Rich.
Okay, Pat, I'm gonna start doing the lid now.
Uh-huh.
Do I start with another two-dimensional disc?
I would. Yeah, I would.
Start
Absolutely.
Just like I started the cut.
Bingo.
Okay, so, the cylinder tool, hold the control key down.
Single left click, right? You single left click in your viewport.
Okay,
Now move your cursor away from the tool handle. Then hold the control key and left click and drag. There it is. Yep.
okay, and then I just start that to build the lid.
Bingo.
Build
You,
the lid.
you got it. And you're on your way. Darren.
Yeah, I need help.
Okay, what's your question?
I selected the polygons.
Uh-huh.
I pressed them.
Uh-huh.
I painted it, but then the whole thing turns red.
Show me. Hit undo. Okay. All right. Okay. That's fine. Yep.
Okay, let's say red.
Red. Yep. Hit OK. Now, the reason why everything's red is because you had everything selected.
I had everything selected.
You had everything selected. Also, I want to help you out here. I want you to double click on your mesh.
Mesh.
Yep, on your mesh, on your geometry. Hit the F key. There you go. Now single left click off to deselect what you got. There it is. There's your coffee cup. Your polygons were inverted. You might need to do the same thing for your lid. Hit F. There we go. Okay. Now, if you want like just the lid to be a different color, just select those polygons. Okay. And now, if you make it black or whatever. Boom. Oh, okay. So this is what happened. We didn't give it a name.
Okay.
Hit undo. Do it again. M. Oops.
M.
Or hit cancel. Yep. Now hit M. Now give it a name. We didn't give it a name. If you leave it as default, it's going to shade everything that color. Cool. Did you give it a color?
Nope, not yet.
Bam. So give it a name, then give it a color. All right. Now you can't do it here because this is the final render. Close this window down, Hannah. Now go into your render tab. Yes. There we go. Because that one is a preview. Now put your cursor. Yeah, there you go. Now hit render.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you want to preview your render before you hit the render, so you can see exactly where your coffee cup is in the photograph.
Okay.
Okay? It's kind of like looking through the viewfinder of your camera.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Do we need a new item with the lid or the table?
You can. And actually, let's talk about items today, because this is a good segue into this week's content. Okay. Up until now, we've been working within just a single item in Modo. Let's just jump back over there real fast. Okay. And if you look very carefully within my scene, here is my coffee cup. We haven't spent a lot of time working with the item list. Okay. Earlier, I mentioned that we're going to be working within, or always going to be working within, a hierarchy of three-dimensional elements. The top of that hierarchy is an item. And earlier I was mentioning that an item is kind of a lot like a car. It's the most general description of that vehicle as you can get, right? But really what a car is a whole series of components. You put all those components together and you have a car. A component of a car would be like the engine, the wheels, the transmissions, the doors, the handles, the radio. Those are all components that make up a car, okay? By themselves, those components really don't have a role. They don't really have a function. They're kind of useless. But when you combine them together, you have a car, all right? We're kind of doing the same thing here within inside of our 3D modeling applications. We've been working up until now with components, okay? Do you guys remember what those 3D components were? There's 3 of them. You got it. Verts, edges, and polygons, okay? These are the component types. Edges, and then polys. These are components, okay? They're the building blocks. The vert could be like the engine. You know, the edges are kind of like the wheels, I don't know, you know? And the polygons are, you know, something else. The transmission, okay? They're not the most important player inside of our system. The topmost level of our hierarchy is called an item. And items are really important, okay? All 3 of these elements feed into an item, okay? Items are special inside of Modo because they're containers for a number of different things. Vertices, edges, and polygons are just one of those component types that are encapsulated by an item. Items are the only element inside of Modo that can be animated, so if you wanted to animate a character or a car or a train for that matter, really the construction of that object contains a whole series of items. There's a number of different items that, there are some items inside of Modo that I haven't even explored yet, okay? They can be unique. They have their own set of rules, their own definitions, their own things that make them special. Up until today, we've been working with something called a mesh item, okay? A mesh item. The mesh item in Modo is pretty special. This is the only item type that allows these 3 components to be inserted within them, okay? So that's an important distinction between all the other items. Mesh items, only thing that's going to have a polygon, an edge, or a vertex in it, okay? Modo makes it pretty easy to understand and spot a mesh item from a million miles away, okay? When you create a new mesh item, it actually calls it mesh, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to go and create custom names for all your mesh items. So the important kind of icon for a mesh item is that right there. When you're looking at your item list and you see anything that's got that little blue cube next to it, you know immediately that this item contains vertices, edges, and polygons. This is a model file, okay? There are a number of different other types of items in our scene, but the mesh item is the only one that's going to have vertices, edges, and polygons, okay? If you look carefully inside of my item list here, you can see that we have a backdrop item. What's contained in a backdrop item? A picture. Are we going to store verts, edges, and polys in a backdrop item? No. The mesh item is responsible for doing that. If we keep cruising and looking down my list here, we have some other item types. Check it out. Cameras. This is what's physically going to be responsible for drawing the image when we hit the render button. It's an item type that's not going to contain vertices, edges, or polygons. Its sole focus and role within inside the Modo system is to make pictures. We also have a directional light whose sole focus is just to provide illumination within the scene. More on this next week when we start talking about lighting. Okay. To help scare you guys, let me show you the overwhelming list of items that we can create inside of Modo. This is just weird. This is the tip of the iceberg. If we go inside this Add Item pull-down menu, check it out. These are all the different types of items that we can create in the scene. Some of these we're going to use quite frequently. Others, I have no idea what they do. I really don't. Okay, there are that many different types of items in the scene. Okay, we have constraints and deformers and duplication items. Actually, replicators I use a lot. Fall-offs, volume items, particles, locators. I mean, there are hundreds of different types of items that we can construct. It's a little overwhelming, but the guys down at Modo, or excuse me, the guys down at Luxology have helped us out a little bit. If you look very carefully, the item list is really broken down into two major sections, okay? And I want to put my cursor down there. There we go. Check it out. If you look very, very carefully, there is a line right here, right there, right under mesh, okay? All of these guys are kind of like the mesh camera backdrop. Those are the rock stars. Those are the three items that you're going to be creating pretty consistently, okay, on a day-to-day basis. Backdrop items, cameras, and meshes, okay? These are the ones that we're going to be primarily focusing on in this class. So it's nice that they've kind of separated those out from the rest. Also, they've made it easier in 701 with this recent kind of menu. So if you're making a lot of lights, it makes it very quick and easy to go create an item that you just previously created in an earlier step. So they're making it a little bit easier to find specific chunks of information in a pretty overwhelming list. I should show you an earlier version of Modo. I'm happy that they're organizing it into a whole series of subcategories now, because it used to be one just crazy long list. And like it was just, there's hundreds of items and you had to go find, you know, your thing in a list, and I'm horrible with lists, I really am. So I'm happy to see that they're categorizing it now. It makes my life a little bit easier, especially for something like a light. I can very quickly go find a light or a deformer, you know. Okay, so check it out. Oops. So how do we use items? What is its role? What is its focus? What is its purpose inside of the scene? Well, I mentioned earlier that an item is really going to be a container for a number of things. Mesh items, vertices, edges, and polygons. Okay? This container can be selected as a whole. Now, a number of you guys are already going on to the final step of your homework assignment and building like the lid of your coffee cup. And if you followed my my kind of advice, it's a separate disconnected piece. Okay? Let me show you what I'm talking about. It's something that looks, you know, kind of like this. Okay, pretend that's the lid. I'm not going to do it. Okay. Pretend that's the lid for your coffee cup. That's an awesome lid. It's an award-winning lid right there. Okay. If you look very carefully at how I've constructed my scene, I really have two separate pieces in one item. I have my cup down here at the bottom, and then I have my award-winning lid. Double-clicking on either of those two disconnected pieces allows me to select just those pieces independently from the rest. Okay? These are called discontiguous polygons. Okay? Think of it just as a separate shape. Okay? A separate shape that's living on the same item as another shape. I got my coffee cup, one shape. Then I got the lid, another shape. Well, what if I want to manipulate all of them together? What if I want to move all of them together or animate all of them together? I could, yeah. Say again?
Use the shift button and select them both.
Select them both. But what if you're in a scene like this? What if you're in an incredibly complex scene where on one layer, on one mesh item, you have hundreds of separate disconnected pieces? Yeah, oh my gosh, that deselecting everything. I mean, I'm not going to go in and select 100 separate pieces. I don't have the time for that. That's just madness, okay? There's no way I'm doing that, okay? This is the model file for my boat that I was showing you earlier, and let me just kind of illustrate my example here. Or an example. Let's go into the exterior hull, and I have let's do just deck detail. On my deck here of the ship, I got a whole bunch of disconnected pieces. Okay, let me check this action out. Shoot this the grate itself. That's one piece. That's one disconnected piece. And then each one of these grates are another. And then I got that little guy's another piece, and these grates are all separated out. If I needed to move, rotate, and scale all of these together as a unit, I'm not going to go through and select them all. It's madness. The item, since it's the topmost element within our hierarchy, overrides the component selection type. and it's going to select everything that's existing on that layer, okay? Everything that's existing on that item, okay? Check it out. We get access to this by going into item mode. So if I was to hit the number 5 key on my keyboard, or by simply activating the item selection set, watch what happens. Look very, very carefully. I'm going to deselect that item and then click on it again. What visually, what has happened here? Yeah, everything's orange now, right? The wireframe color for all of the polygons on that layer is orange, okay? So that means everything is selected, okay? If I was to move it, and this is dangerous, but I'll move it. Check it out. Everything moves. Everything rotates. Everything is now operating as a unit, okay? This is an incredibly powerful system, one that will become more and more accustomed to working within as we get more comfortable working and creating objects inside of our 3D system, okay? Items allow us to work a little bit more globally, okay? Going back to our car metaphor, we have all these separate pieces, right? All these separate components. Here's a model that's a whole bunch of separate pieces. A whole bunch of separate pieces. There I got probably a couple hundred mesh items in there, okay? What if I need to move everything together as a piece? Okay? I gotta throw it together in an item. Our car is made up of the wheels, the engine, the transmission, but if I want to move the car, I have to select the car now. I gotta work at that level within the hierarchy. I'm no longer messing with components, I'm working on the umbrella level, you know, the topmost level within the hierarchy. Kind of make sense? Yeah, kind of. Getting there? Getting there? Okay. Let me show you a couple other things that make a couple other things on why items are incredibly powerful. Okay. Items allow us to work. Let's go back to my simple scene. Okay. Items allow us to work in a fashion where we can organize our scene into separate layers. You saw my little boat there, and I've painstakingly gone through and modeled a tremendous amount of detail. But at times, I don't want to see all of the detail and all of the objects that I've created on my scene, so I want to turn them on and off. How many of you guys have worked with Photoshop in here? A couple of you guys. I'm a big Photoshop user myself. What we are, in essence, doing are creating layers, like Photoshop layers, okay? But instead of having just pixels like we would in Photoshop, we have polygons on that layer. So how do we create a new layer? How do we create a new mesh item layer? Well, it's really, really easy. You saw we have an option in the Add Item pull-down menu in the upper right-hand corner of the screen where it said Mesh, okay? It's an easy way to add a blank mesh item into the scene. Let's just do it. Add Item, Mesh, bam. Now we have an empty mesh item within the scene. If you look very, very carefully at our item list, Modo is communicating some really important information to the user here. Now examine what I would call the first mesh item. Look at this one. And specifically look at all of its UI elements. The icon, the label, the text, if you will. And then compare it to the other mesh items in the scene. What is the big difference? The new mesh items are grayed out, okay? So what do you think that tells you?
There's nothing on them.
They're empty. They're empty containers. They don't contain any vertices, edges, or polygons, okay? Whenever you see grayed out text inside of Modo, that's telling us that that item is empty. Nothing in it. It's waiting patiently for us to populate that item with some additional detail. Let's do it real fast for my little coffee cup. Okay, all right. I got mesh item number 3 selected, and I'm just going to create a little ground plane for my coffee cup to sit on. Okay, and I'm going to do a better job as to positioning that real fast by center, select it all, and then I'll just use my eyeball to kind of put it underneath my coffee cup somewhere right around in there. All right, so now I got a groovy ground plane. Yeah?
For the coffee cup, do you want us to put the ground plane on another mesh layer?
You don't have to for this time out. It's icing on the cake if you did. For this next homework assignment, yes, I would like things on separate item layers, okay? On separate mesh items, excuse me. All right, so what do we gain by separating these elements out from one another? We get control. We also get the ability to animate them independently from the rest of the scene, okay? But let's talk about that control system, because this is really kind of the drum that I want to beat when it comes to items for today, okay? Since we're able to control these containers separately from each other, one of the things that we gain entry into is being able to activate and deactivate their visibility, okay? This is, the guys down at Luxology, they are big Photoshop fans, so they give us very similar icons. Actually, they give us the exact same visibility icon that we're used to seeing over in Photoshop, okay? Before we get into that button, I got to take a step back. My item list is getting kind of messy. Okay, everything's called mesh. Boo. Okay, when everything is called mesh, it's really easy to get confused as to the role and the responsibility of each one of these mesh items within our scene. So maybe I should rename them, right? Has anyone stumbled upon how to rename a mesh item?
Right-click.
Right-click on it, absolutely. Right-click, rename is the first choice in the list. That's a good one. I'm a Mac guy, and so I like to do what you can interactively change the name by doing what I call the click, pause, click procedure, okay? So if I was to click on this one, I'm going to click, pause for a second, then I click again, and I can rename it that way. I'll do it again so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Click, pause, click, and then get that rename option, okay? And I'm just going to call this one ground. Click, pause, click. This is my cup. There we go. Oops, excuse me, I apologize. If we, let me zoom out a little bit here. I'm going to click on that visibility icon for my ground plane. That guy, okay? If I click on the visibility icon, see how it turns off? But why isn't it shading it the same as my coffee cup? It's kind of odd, right? Kind of odd. This is actually Modo making it easier for us to visually understand the mesh item that we're currently working on. The default settings in Modo are going to shade, smooth shade, what's classified as the active mesh item or the foreground mesh item. In layman's term, that's the one that we clicked on. Okay? Whatever one's selected over here, it's going to show you those polygons smooth shaded in the OpenGL viewport. All other mesh items in our scene are going to be wireframe. Okay? So they're just going to give you that black outline of their polygonal cage sitting over here in the background. Okay? Which is why we're not seeing both of those objects shaded in our scene. Can we select multiple mesh items simultaneously? Alexandra's like, yeah, we can, absolutely. How do we do that? Hold down the Shift key and physically select all the items in your scene, absolutely, and you can see what's happened there. Now, the cautionary kind of thing that I want to steer you away from is really not holding down the Shift key, because what the Shift key is going to do is going to perform what's called a gang select. Okay, it's going to select everything in between the first element and the last element that you clicked on. Check it. Gang select. So if I was to grab that one and then hold down the Shift key and grab my ground mesh item, it selects everything in between. No likey, that's not what we want. We just want to grab that one and maybe ground. So if I hold down the if I hold down the Control key, then I can interactively select only the mesh items that I want to manipulate. Okay, great little keyboard shortcut. Can we reorganize the mesh item, the item list? Excuse me. Maybe I want all my mesh items to be close to each other visually. I like that. It makes it easier for my brain to kind of work and decode what's going on. How do we do that? Drag and drop. Absolutely. It's just like Photoshop. It's fantastic. If I was to simply grab my ground mesh item, drag it up, you can see that we get that yellow line. That represents the new location within the item list that this object is going to have. I can let go, and now I can reorganize things. Like for me personally, I like having all of my backdrop items, my cameras, and my lights at the bottom of my item list. So this allows me to very quickly go in and reorganize my list. Okay? The only thing I want to caution you against is dragging objects on top of other objects in the item list. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to take my ground mesh item, and I'm going to left click and drag, and this time notice that my cursor is on top of the word cup. Okay? Also, look at that yellow or that orange line and that yellow arrow. It's pointing at the cup mesh item. If I was to let go, I've now parented those two objects together. More on that in GCOM 410. Just be very aware of where you're dragging and dropping in the item list if you're shuffling things around. Okay? Don't drag on drop on top of things. Drag above or below them to reorganize your list. Now, if you do this, no biggie. Click on the little arrow, and then just drag it out of that hierarchy. It unparents it. So I'm just going to drag it below backdrop, and we're back to where we were. Okay? All right. So that's how we work inside the item list. There are some other additional benefits of working inside the item list. Okay? This is really important for this week's homework assignment because you're going to be making a small cork board, and on that cork board, you're going to have a number of thumbtacks and a number of posters, okay? Maybe I want to have 2 or 3 different coffee cups. What to do? Do I physically model 2 or 3 different coffee cups? No. I duplicate them, absolutely. And this is one avenue that we can duplicate these coffee cups, okay? Check it out. If I was to right-click on the word cup on that item, kind of down, oops, hold on a sec. Here we go. There it is, duplicate. Duplicate right there, and kind of at the middle of that crazy long list. If I click on duplicate, now I got 2 mesh items, okay? If I'm in item mode, I can hit the move tool. Check it out. Now I got 2 identical coffee cups, okay? 2 identical coffee cups. Pretty neat, huh? Pretty neat. Questions so far? Yes, ma'am. There is. So if you want to make folders, if you're really used to working inside of folders, absolutely. You can make them through the add item menu list, and they're called group locators, okay? They should just call them locators. They should just call them folders. But, you know, it's called a group locator, and there it is. So it's just a folder. It's just a folder. This is a great way of organizing things. I often use group locators. You may have seen in my boat model a moment ago that each part of the boat was in its own folder. That way I can just turn, you know, the interior off. I can turn all the masts and the sails off in a folder. You know, it just makes it really easy. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about today is actually a modeling thing. If you look at the assignment that you're going to be striving to complete this week, you're going to be making a cork board, kind of like a whiteboard. But on that cork board, you're going to be making some posters. A whole bunch of posters. I think 5 posters, if I remember correctly. And each one of these posters, you know, they can be carbon copy clones of each other. I'm happy with that. So you can duplicate them, which is just dandy, using the system that I just showed you. But I want to show you a really cool tool that will allow you to infuse a nice level of realism for your posters, okay? Because, you know, often 3D modelers are asked to recreate the realities that are surrounding them. And if you look carefully at the way posters hang from cork boards, they kind of curve away from that cork board. If there's like 2 push pins on top of that poster, okay, the bottom is unattached to the wall, so you know the tension that's along the paper. Excuse me, my throat's dry. Whew, that was a good one. Got something in my throat. Good sign I've been talking too long. Okay, excuse me. I'll see if I can finish up here real fast. So we need to bend our poster. It's really easy to do, but the tool is a little bit conceptual, Okay, so let me show you how to use the tool. It's called the bend tool. What shape is our poster? This is a rectangle, right? So what tool are we going to use to make our rectangle? Cube, a cube tool. Okay, let's make a poster real fast. Excuse me, that was a good one. I'm going to use the cube tool and simply draw out a rectangle. That's pretty good. Okay, spacebar to drop the tool. I'm going to go back into my polygon mode so I can work with this a little bit more directly. Okay. Now I want my little poster. We're going to pretend that this little square is my poster, and I want it to curve away from the wall to look as though the edges are, kind of bowing out a little bit. Now you could do this manually by like selecting polygons and rotating them, but you will just go crazy because that's just a ton of work to do something very, very simple. We do need some more geometry on our little poster here, right? Because we only have one polygon. I need some more polygons on my poster to get a nice little bend. The more polygons you have, the finer the quality bend you'll produce. So here's what I want you to do. If you're following along, and you'll see this in the instructional videos and in the time lapse, if you do Shift D, D is in delta, it's going to subdivide that polygon. Okay, so it's basically going to take a single polygon and split it into 4. Let me do it real quick. Shift delta D, hit OK, and now I have 4 polygons. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I select them all again, do it one more time. Now I've turned 4 into a 4x4 grid. So now I got 16. And that's good enough for what we're going to do. If you wanted to keep doing this, I would encourage you to do so. It's just going to give you a finer result. Now that we've got some more geometry on our poster, check it out. We can go and start bending this, okay? And this is where it gets kind of cool, okay? Over here in our toolbar, we have a tab called Deform. And I'm a big fan of these. And under the rotation section of tools, we have one called Bend. This is going to be our guy. What do you think the Bend tool is going to do? It's going to bend stuff. It's going to bend stuff, okay? It'd be really difficult to model the poster initially with that curve on there, right? It'd be actually very difficult to model a poster that has a curve in it. So it's a whole lot easier to model the poster flat, bend it afterwards, right? Another great example. How many guys know Corinthian columns? Roman columns, okay, yeah. I'm a 3D modeler. This is kind of one of those things that all 3D modelers do. We make Corinthian columns at one point or another in our career. Well, at the top of classic Roman architecture, especially on Corinthian columns, there are these very ornate, I've just forgotten what they are, but they're leaves, okay? And I think they're olive branches or leaves. They're at the bottom. And the Corinthian column goes up and then extrudes out by steps, and then these leaves are at the top, right? And they're bent. Well, these leaves at the top of our columns, they're crazy detail. I mean, it's a leaf, it's a leaf, so that's a bad leaf, okay? But there's a lot of detail on the interior of my leaf, okay? Am I going to model it curved to match the top of my column? No, I want to model it flat because it's easier to model it flat and then bend it and move it into place after I'm done. Okay, because it's just a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster. The result will be more accurate, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to, because if this is the side profile of my Corinthian column, okay, I'm not going to try to figure out how to model it like this, bent on the side. That's just a nightmare. You model it flat, then you bend it and move it into place after you're done. Okay, we're going to do the same thing here with the bend tool. So this is infinitely useful. I use the bend tool all the time. We already have our polygons selected, so if I was to turn on the tool and then click in the viewport to apply the tool, check out what happens, okay? Now I want you to pay very, very close attention to where you click, okay? I'm going to click at the top of my poster, up here, boom. I click at the top of my poster, and you can see that the computer automatically draws 2 interactive tool handles for us. We have a big blue circle, and then a purple line, the light blue cube at the end of that purple line. Now you have to watch very carefully or you have to watch what orientation this blue circle has been applied to. The bend that you do is going to be parallel to the plane of that circle, okay? So what I'm talking about, parallel to the plane of the circle. So my circle is facing this way. So when I move that blue circle, my thing's going to bend like this, okay? It's going to bend with the circle. Think of it kind of like a gear, all right? Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you left-click and drag on that blue circle, that's actually the widget that controls the deformation, and it bends it like this, okay? But I don't want it to bend it like that, right? How do I want to bend it? Going the opposite direction, okay? So I'm going to do this. I'm going to drop my tool, and then I'm going to orbit around a little bit. So I'm kind of like getting the profile, or just the profile, you know, almost the profile of my piece of paper, and then I'll reapply the tool. Click up at the top. Now look at where the blue circle is, okay? That blue circle is kind of perpendicular to the piece of paper, okay? So when I move the blue circle now, I'm getting the bend that I want. So you gotta use your eyeballs with this tool. The orientation of that blue circle is gonna determine the direction that you're bending, okay? If you're getting the wrong direction, drop the tool or hit undo until the tool has gone away. Orbit your viewport, like I just did, to kind of see the profile of the piece of paper and reapply the tool. Please note that my tool is still active. This is the awesomeness of the Modo tool set, okay? This is one of those moments where you're like, take that, Maya, okay? You don't got anything like this, all right? The Modo tools are live. So any changes that we make to the tool options while the tool is running is going to be immediately seen in the viewport, okay? Check this out. Some of you guys are probably wondering what in the world the role of that purple line and that light blue cube is, okay? The light blue cube at the end of the purple line represents the end of the bend. Well, it has a partner. If something has an end, something probably has a start as well. If you look very, very carefully in the center of our tool, and I wish it would not do that. If you look very carefully at the center of our blue cube, we have its counterpart. That one is the start of the bend. This one represents the end of the bend. If I was to simply grab it, oops, I'm twisting it, sorry. There we go. I can determine at what point my bend starts. So maybe I only want to have that bottom row bend. I can lift this up some. And now I'm only bending that kind of bottom part. So you get a lot of control here, okay? This also works on a selection level. I want to drop the tool and hit undo. If I only want to bend these two rows, well, I'm just going to select those two rows, okay? Now when I apply the bend tool, check it out. Only those two rows are going to be influenced. Everything else is going to remain the same, just like Photoshop. I think our selection kind of mantra is coming home to roost in this moment. Whatever is selected is going to be edited. If nothing's selected, everything is going to be edited. I only selected the bottom two rows of my poster, so those are the only two rows that were bent. Questions on how to work with the bend tool? I think once you, yeah, go ahead.
Have you ever used that blue cube?
I'm sorry, can you say a little bit louder?
Have you ever used that blue cube?
Have I ever used that blue cube? Help me out.
The line with the thing.
The line, have I ever used it?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, being able to control what you're bending is really quite valuable. Let me show you a practical application of this, okay? And this will be the last thing we do because I know we're running out of time, okay? What if you're making a pipe? Okay, what if you're making a, that's not what I wanted. There we go. What if you're making a pipe? I'll do this, just bevel it. Okay. And what if you want to have this pipe bend 90 degrees in a very specific point? Okay. Check it out. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a little bit of magic. What I'm doing here isn't necessarily important. There we go. Okay. I'm just getting more geometry in my scene here. Oops. Okay. So these polygons in here represent the elbow of the pipe. Okay. So all of these guys down at the bottom, I want to remain in its current location, and the only part of the pipe that I want to mess with is the top bit. Okay. So if I select just those bits, okay, I can influence just those polygons, or I can use the start and end of that bend command. So let's go deform, grab bend. Let's see, I want the start of my bend to be right there and the end to be up there. Or, excuse me, I want the end of my bend to be right there. There we go. Yeah, it's a really, really cool tool. Really cool tool. I like it. I like it a lot. Now, I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions. I know in many capacities that's it's an interesting tool to use. It does require some experience. Experience that you will absolutely get working on this week's homework assignments. Let's just talk about it real fast. In addition to wrapping up the coffee cup real fast, I would like you to build your little cork board, okay? I've given you some examples of what the cork board should look like. What basic shape is your cork board? It's a rectangle, so what tool are you going to use? Cube, okay? It's a whole bunch of cubes. Almost everything on your cork board is going to be a cube minus the little thumbtacks. What shape is the thumbtack? Cylinder, okay? Using what you know about creating cylinders and using the bevel tool, you can make your thumbtack pretty easily, okay? Now there's a whole bunch of thumbtacks and a whole bunch of individual posters on your cork board. Use the duplication command that I showed you a moment ago to separate them out, to make copies of them. Okay, you don't have to make, 1,000 individual thumbtacks, right? You make one, and then you duplicate it. Okay. There are a couple metrics that I want to make sure you guys are aware of. If you look at the requirements for this project, you're going to make it a cork board, 5 different pieces of paper. Okay. This week we are going to be making the model. Next week, we're going to be adding all the textures to the model. So we're going to be painting it. We're going to be putting images on those posters. We're going to be making it look like an actual cork board instead of just some, oddly shaded white polygons inside of our render. Okay? We want it to come to life with all those textures. So this is going to be a 2-week project. Week 1, geometry. You're going to be handing in your project file and a render of your geometry when you're done. Okay? Next week, we'll go back in and texture it. Also, you need to produce a wall for your cork board to hang on. Okay? What shape is your wall? It's a rectangle. It's a cube. Okay? It's it doesn't have to be anything fancy if you don't want it to be. Okay? But you need to have something to place your cork board on. This directional light, that's a default. Don't worry about that. Actually, I should have removed that from the list. By default, you automatically have a directional light in your scene, so that's not something you need to add. The final render size is going to be 720 by 480, which is the default settings. And please make sure you're saving a JPEG of your render when you're finished. Okay? Here are some good projects. This person went above and beyond. You don't necessarily have to go this far, but I thought it was cool. Always want to share it. Okay. In addition, I've also given you a time-lapse video that shows me doing this project in front of you. So if you need some extra help on the sequence of this thing, check it out. Okay. I had a lab today. Don't worry about the lab. We'll do that in class next week. Okay. It'll be a fast little one. I've already inundated you with stuff. This lab goes over one extra thing of the bevel tool that we can explore next week. Okay, so don't worry about the lab for this week. We'll do it next week. In the resources section on renderography, I've given you access to, I think, 4 videos that directly talk about what we've talked about and covered this afternoon. The cloning objects isn't something that we went into in class, but if you want to watch it and get a really great idea of how to clone things and to duplicate things with style, as I say, this is a good one to watch. But you don't necessarily have to clone your objects to finish this assignment. Using that right-click duplicate option that I showed you in the item list will yield you the result that you need to finish this project. Okay? It's just icing on the cake. It's extra goodies. Okay? Extra goodies. Those 4 videos will absolutely get you where you need to be for this project if you need to kind of refresh a little bit on today's topic. Okay? Questions? 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 Very good. The live stream for today's lecture should be available, within the next 8 to 12 hours, I think. YouTube normally takes some time to process and archive the video. It'll show up on my YouTube channel. Other questions? I'm sorry I kept you 4 minutes past the class time. We'll see you next week.
I had a question for you regarding the
Yeah.
zone tool.
Yeah. I'm listening. I'm just going to stop my stream real fast.
Is it possible to default